to stay.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond Boards, a podcast dedicated to the actions and interests of skaters beyond skateboarding. My guest today does not need much of an introduction. Bobby Puleo grew up in New Jersey where he started skating in the mid-80s and has become an icon in New York City skateboarding culture. After a highly productive and carefully curated skateboarding career, riding for iconic brands such as Nimbus, Szot, Zoo York, Stereo, Mad Circle, Enjoy or Traffic, in the last 15 years or so, Bobby has been making art out of random objects he picks up on the streets of New York. He also regularly teams up with Kris Parkinson for his Same Old YouTube channel to explore skateboarding history through his very unique and enthusiastic perspective. So here's my conversation with Bobby. I hope you'll enjoy it.
Hello, Quentin and Bobby. It's Charlie Barley. Good morning or afternoon. I have two quick questions for Bobby. The first one is, in lieu of the fact that I think you're still vegetarian, Rutt's Hut or Hot Grill? Number two, what do you think was the most iconic bank spot we used to skate in New Jersey back in the days up till, say, 1995? Thanks, guys. Have fun.
Well, he probably knows the answer to both of those, but Rutt's Hut for sure. And what that question refers to is where I grew up in Clifton and North Jersey in general is, it's crazy, but for some reason, North Jersey is known for hot dogs. Mm-hmm. And Rutt's Hut is this iconic, I mean, Hot Grill is too, but they're just they're the two iconic hot dog spots. It's similar to like Gino's Steaks and Pat's Steaks in Philly. The two spots are not right across the street from each other. That's how Pat's and Gino's is in Philly. But these two places are in Clifton, and they're on opposite sides of the city that I grew up in, Clifton. But yeah, so I would go with Rutt's Hut. It's just a more interesting experience because of what the place looks like, how long it's been there, yada, yada, yada. In terms of bank spots in Jersey, there's three that come to mind, and Charlie will attest to all three of these. But for me personally, the first one is Weaselbrook Park. Mm-hmm. And that is a spot that was in Clifton where I grew up. And it was a playground, and it was this kind of like, it was a water fountain. I actually have a trick there in my Five Flavors part. And there was this metal slide that went down the middle of it, so you could do tricks over the slide like it was a channel. Uh-huh. And sadly, the spot's not there anymore. But number two was School 11, which was this other spot that was in the next town over, Passaic. And we used to skate that pretty heavily. And third would be this spot called Gotham Banks, which Charlie brought me to. That was this crazy warehouse zone out there by the Meadowlands. And yeah, it was a spine bank. Well, it was a bank to wall, a bank, and a spine bank, because the building where it was at stopped, and then the bank to wall, the bank that went up to the wall kept going, and then it spined over. Mm-hmm. Which was pretty cool, unique little spot. But there was like hundreds of little bank spots in New Jersey just for whatever reason. But those are three. But for me, the top two are Weaselbrook and School 11. And School 11 had two sets of banks in it. It had a brick bank spot with a stage. And nowadays you see kids within the last like 15, 20 years, kids do tricks on this silver rail that's on top of these red bricks. Fred, Tail Slit, a bunch of people did all kinds of stuff on that spot. And it's like hips, but we used to skate the asphalt banks that were in the playground, and it was just this like kind of enclosed pit of like, you know, children's playground items, swings, seesaws. But there was a perfect asphalt banks all the way around the whole thing. But yeah, that's that. That was a good set of questions from Charlie.
Yeah. So you guys go way back, I assume. Yeah, was he one of your first, like one of the first people you started skating with, or did you meet with him perhaps a few years after you started?
Yeah, so the way I met Charlie was, I don't even know how I met him, but it was probably just through this network. But Charlie owned and operated with another guy called Ian. He operated Nimbus, which was a skateboard company.
Right.
And so Charlie was kind of like my first sponsor, even though I rode for this other brand called Public, which was run by a guy called Kai Olsen. But that was not the same Public as what was started by Eddie Radigi and Chet Thomas. Rode for a brand called Public out of Alva. Okay. After Alva kind of started to like disband and become new school, Chet and Eddie Radigi had a brand called Public, but this was a different Public on the East Coast. And then I rode for them first. I might have gotten one board from them, and then Charlie kind of came in and swooped me up, and I rode for Nimbus. And then Nimbus, that whole early Nimbus team was basically after Szot disbanded. Szot had a whole roster of like younger AM kids, like Peter Bisi, Ryan Hickey, Peter Hahn, Jeff Pang, a whole bunch of dudes. And when Szot went under, Nimbus kind of absorbed all those guys. And then all those guys, including myself, we sort of became the first round of what would become Zoo York.
Zoo York, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the Nimbus is like in between Szot and Zoo.
Perfect transition, because you just mentioned this next mystery question. All right, let's see.
What's up? Jefferson Pang here. I have a question, and this is just from my perspective, but to me, Bobby, as someone that skated New York City, coming from Jersey, approached his skateboarding and spots in a way that no one did before him, where people that lived in New York, we had our neighborhoods that we would skate, and we go skate with other friends in their neighborhoods. But Bobby seemed to be on a mission to seek and find skate spots that weren't your typical spots like the Banks or down on Water Street or Midtown. I want to know what the inspiration was, and that thirst for the unknown that seems to fuel Bobby's curiosity in skateboarding and art. Big time fan, first time caller.
Wow. Yeah, Jeff, man. He was a huge influence. He rode for Nimbus as well. And he was like one of the first like kind of powerhouse dudes I had ever really met. Super powerful skateboarder. And he skated School 11 with us a bunch of times. He would come out to Jersey. Peter would come out to Jersey. Ryan would come out to Jersey. Mike Hernandez would come out there. But so for me it was because I wasn't from the city, I wanted lay of the land. Like I wanted to know every little nook and cranny. So I just started kind of taking the train and just exploring little zones. I was also super into graffiti. So I would go and I would kind of kill two birds with one stone. I would check out all the graffiti. I would get to kind of like sightsee almost and get to check out what spots were around. And this was at a point when, I don't know. It was just, I don't know. I was just curious. Curiosity was my main sort of thing.
Your drive?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It wasn't like, it's pretty cut and dry there. But great question as well.
But was there a point where maybe later in your career where you started, piecing together your parts in advance, like, or not piecing together, but like really having a vision for them and maybe, selecting either spots or tricks to do on certain type of spots and stuff?
Yeah,
and having more of a global vision of what the part would look like eventually?
Yeah, of course. I mean, continuity was always like kind of a thing for me. I always wanted obviously, I wanted stuff that no one had seen before, spots that nobody had seen before, where, when you watch a video, you see a spot and you're like, oh my God, where's that? Especially if it's in, you seem to be French?
Yeah.
So like, if there's a spot in France or if there's a spot in Paris and you've been skating Paris for, 15 years, 25 years, your whole life, whatever, when somebody uncovers a new spot, it's kind of a cool thing to, be like, oh, where's that place at?
For sure. That's exciting.
Yeah. So, a lot of it was that, and it was not like I was trying to be like going out of my way. It's just like what I was into doing,
Yeah, naturally.
Yeah. New terrain, as they say. Lower Manhattan, in a sense, like what Jeff was talking about, the Banks, the financial district, Wall Street, whatever. That zone down there is like pretty tiny little area, and all the skate spots, for the most part, were concentrated within like a 20 block radius,
Yeah.
And then, then there was like going up to Midtown, and Midtown was like, and the thing about Manhattan is that it's all pretty much like grid. So it's like, it's very easy to kind of just like be totally satiated by like a 10 block radius, where you don't really have to go up to the Bronx, or you don't have to go out to like, But from what I understand, Jeff and all the New York guys, I listened to a Huff interview fairly recently. In fact, I think it was his last interview he ever did with Eli. And Huff was talking about going out to Canarsie. And as soon as I got done, listening to it, I texted Eli and I was like, what the fuck was Huff going out to Canarsie for? He talks about riding the L train to the last stop, which is Canarsie. And Eli was probably like, one of his friends probably lived out there, and that was what you did. You went and skated your friend's neighborhood, And Jeff and crew coming out of Sunset Park, I mean, they had their like little kind of like, crew that would skate there, and you would go out to Sunset Park and they would have like a jump ramp or whatever, a little spot. But the main meeting place was like Manhattan.
Yeah.
So it was like, went and skated Manhattan. And mostly the banks and the financial district and or Astor Place, Washington Square, or Midtown. I mean, that was like the gist of like Manhattan skateboard scene in the 80s. So Central Park a little bit too, but that was like before I had started coming into Manhattan.
Okay, this next one I have is from German Nieves.
Nieves, yeah.
Nieves, sorry about that. He said, ask him what about Matt Hensley influenced his skating in the early days, and what did he keep in his chain wallet?
What did I keep in my chain wallet? Probably nothing. It was purely an accessory, because back then I didn't have a credit card. I might have had an ID, but to be honest, there was probably nothing in my chain wallet. It was just to imitate Matt Hensley's chain wallet. It was literally a fashion accessory. But yeah, I definitely rocked a chain wallet. And it's funny because German goes back far enough to where he remembers kind of me skating with a chain wallet and chukka boots and pulled up socks, just like Matt Hensley used to wear.
Yeah.
And that was around the time that I probably rode for Nimbus. In fact, I want to say like my first photograph in the magazine was probably like 92. In Transworld. I had a sequence, and I was telling somebody the other day that I've only had 2 photographs in magazines where I'm wearing shorts. And my first photograph in the magazine, I have my kind of like my green army style shorts with my pulled up socks and my chukka boots, and I'm wearing a Nimbus shirt, and that's about 1992. And that's kind of like, around then is like 92 is Plan B, when Matt kind of like officially announces his like retirement from skateboarding.
Yes. Sure.
After that, things start to change by 93, which is then Plan B changing into Girl. Well, I shouldn't say Plan B, but the Girl guys starting Girl, leaving Plan B. And style just starts to change, over the top. By 92 to 93, it was like a heavy, heavy change. You're going from like almost like the rave scene into like uncut jeans and white T-shirts of the Girl era,
Yeah, you're finding all the transitions for me because, you're going to make sense of this next question.
Hey, Bobby. It's your old friend, Jacob. And we share a massive love of nostalgia and artifacts. And I sort of know and explore why artifacts mean so much to me, but I would love to hear you just talk about your fascination with objects and artifacts, what it evokes in you when you see things, what types of things you're looking for, what things catch your eye, and what are the most meaningful artifacts that you have. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, great question. Jake Rosenberg.
Yep.
Man, so when somebody would ask, or if, in terms of like the question Jake just asks, artifacts could, I definitely have like 2 or 3 like realms of my life where I could define artifact. It's like, obviously there's skateboard artifacts, you know, Jake has a wild collection of stuff, from like skateboards to like, you know, obviously all of his own personal Plan B and filming. I don't want to call it memorabilia, but in a sense it is memorabilia.
Yeah, sure.
And so, you know, but then my art, in a sense, it revolves around collecting objects.
Yep.
So, and that's obviously sort of like, I'm not going to say it's not skate related, because everything that I do has kind of like, to a certain extent, has like been born out of skateboarding. The things I pick up and I recognize on the ground is from looking down while I'm skating, you know?
Right.
And noticing repetition in the environment. But obviously for skateboarding artifact, and you know, and then there's other stuff that I'm into, which is just like general ephemera, like art material, or say, you know, a certain record. And I don't really collect records, but you know, if given the opportunity and I saw X, Y, or Z on record, I would purchase it, you know, just to kind of have it. Thank God I don't really do that, but I don't know. I collect graffiti stickers. I collect graffiti, you know, materials like signs that I see that has a, you know, if I could get a sign off of a building that has like a famous graffiti writer's tag on it, I'll try and get it down, you know. I collect things that I just think are interesting, you know. So there's like obviously different realms to the term artifact, but
yeah,
for skateboarding stuff, it's anything that I think is significant, right? Obviously, it's things that I like in skateboarding, and it's mostly pertaining to my youth when I was growing up. So we're talking like probably 85 to 95 would be like a golden period, right?
Okay.
Because by 95, 96, you know, I'm kind of immersed in my own crap, and I'm getting free skateboards, and, you know, I mean, part of me wishes that I would have had the wherewithal and the foresight to hang on to all the stuff that I had when I was a kid, but I didn't. So now part of what motivates me is almost to like get that stuff back in a sense.
Yeah.
But I'm just into anything that I think is rad. You know, I have Grail stuff that's like high on the list of like highly sought after for me. You know, I'm not a board collector, thank God. I have a few kind of cool skateboards, but I don't really have that kind of money to spend on that stuff, because prices now have got, you know, kind of gone, they've dropped a little bit, but you know, so it's mostly like stickers and magazines and stuff, and then anything cool, shirts, t-shirts, you know, anything pertaining to the physical objects that we sort of like need, quote unquote, need to skateboard. Obviously, you need a skateboard to skateboard, but, you know, when you're a kid, so much of your identity revolves around having the Tony Hawk shirt, you know, so, you know, especially when you go back into the 80s, it was like, I'm part of this tribe, you know? You kind of like needed to sort of like, you know, and you wanted to identify with the tribe, you know?
Yeah.
But anyhow, and then, you know, with my art stuff, it's just kind of like I strive for things that I see repeated. And then there's also kind of like a bit of a guideline there. There's like, I strive to collect 9 of an object. And if I think I can collect 9 of that object, then that's what I shoot for. And then once I get 9, I start, you know, I never like reject it if it turns up in the environment over and over. And then if it's plentiful enough, I shoot for 81, which is 9 sets of 9.
Yeah.
You know,
I was. You might have said this in other interviews, but I was wondering why 9 and not 6, or why number 9? Yeah.
So there was no rhyme or reason to it, but 9 is just, it fits nicely 3, 3, and 3.
Yeah.
In that grid, and then I always say it's just easy enough to do and just difficult enough to do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's easy to find one of an object. And as you get more and more, you know, and part of that was almost like, you know, it kind of goes back to like with my skate spots, you know, I was always striving to find something off the beaten path so that you didn't have the next guy coming up behind you and one-upping you or taking you out at that spot, you know, giving them a little bit of a challenge, like go find it first and then try and do your trick on it.
Right.
With the 9 sets of 9, you know, the art that I make, it would be quote unquote easy to replicate it if you went out to the store and bought 9 of those objects and put them together. But you know, the things that I find are they're seasoned by the environment, so I find them obviously out on the street. Now you could also artificially produce wear and tear on an object as well.
Sure.
You know, but you know, when somebody is really kind of challenged with the idea of like saying like, okay, here's this object, go out and find 9 of these and record how long it takes you to do that. Hopefully that kind of gives like the viewer some sort of perspective on like, well, shit, I've never seen any of this object out on the street, you know? So for me, it's a little bit of like a treasure hunt kind of scenario where, you know, I kind of impose that on myself, and it's a challenge, and it's, like I said, it's just easy enough to do and just difficult enough to do.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that there must be a lot of things that you found only like 7 or 8 times and not this 9th or 8th time, or do you have like a bunch of like unfinished collections?
Not really, because, you know, the things that I decide to finally pick up is usually governed by the idea that I've seen enough of them that I can achieve 9.
Okay.
But there, you know, in the early days, it was kind of like that was always the challenge. Like, am I going to find 9 of these? And some things have taken me a very, very long time. But when you're at it for enough, you know, months, years, whatever, I would say, I would say there's not really anything in my collections that I don't have at least 9 of. I mean, there's probably 1 or 2 things, but these got to be like some of the most obscure things you could ever. And I can't even think of one off the top of my head. But I know, like I said, if it's going to be super difficult to do, I kind of don't bother.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of my collections of things have sort of were grown out of the fact that I picked up maybe 1 or 2 of them going way back into like say the late 90s, and I just kind of like had certain things that fell into when I was sort of unconsciously collecting stuff. I would pick up whatever I thought was interesting. And then, you know, it just happened that later on I had 1 or 2 of those laying around, and those added to the making up the 9 of whatever it was that it, you know, I was striving for. So, yeah. But, you know, it's not complex stuff. It's just kind of like cataloging and keeping your eye kind of, you know, peeled all the time.
Yeah. It must be hard to just go down the street, and you must be like always scanning for stuff, and must be hard to switch that off.
Yeah, my girlfriend will say
attest to that.
Takes us, you know, 20 extra minutes to get anywhere. But you know, whatever.
All right, this next question is from a very, very renowned collector. Let's see.
Bobby Puleo. It's Tim Anderson. So I have a few questions for you. The first one is, how did you get through the 90s without skating a world board? I can't believe that. That's pretty amazing. I don't know many people that can claim that, but you did. So how did you pull that off? My second question is, if you could meet any skateboarder you want, and just a side note, I love that you're a skate nerd just like us, so I appreciate that. If you could meet any skateboarder you want that you haven't met yet, to like interview them or just pick their brain, who would that be? And my last question is, half cab or Enigma? All right, Bobby. Thanks.
Wow. That's a crazy one. Those are 3 really great questions. So the world board question, I can answer that very easily. And the world board is that I got free boards from the beginning when world sort of became what world became. So I never had to go out to the store and buy a world board because I was already getting free boards. So there was never a need for a world board.
Right.
Now, I will say this. I always would look at them and be like, I would like one of those, but I didn't need one of those. So it never manifested. Okay. That's an easy one. Skateboarder that I would like to meet that I have not met. There's a lot of them. Well, I got invited to go out to SkaterCon this year.
Yeah,
and
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, part of the reason I was sort of like, I was debating it because Phoenix is far. It's like, you know, basically travel one day, go to the SkaterCon. It's like a rough 3 days to a certain extent, you know? Like, I'm probably not going to skate at the skate park there, so it's kind of like, and I don't really like to be off my board for like, you know, that
too long.
Yeah, I like to skate like every day, kind of
you have a routine,
if you will.
Yeah, sure.
But Monty Nolder was going to be there, and when I saw that, I was like, damn, I would love to meet Monty Nolder. Another great one is Tom Groholski. I would love to meet Tom Groholski, and I would really love to pick his brain, probably more than Monty Nolder. So Tom Groholski would be a great one. There's a laundry list of different people I would love to sit down and just talk to.
Sure.
Basically anybody that's in skateboarding from 1985, earlier, even earlier. Yeah, I'm just so curious about people and their stories and their journeys,
Yeah, sure.
Tom Groholski would be a really great one. Just, because he's a Jersey guy, and it's just interesting to hear about the roots of skateboarding in New Jersey,
Yeah, definitely.
The last question he asked...
half cab or Enigma?
Oh, half cab, for sure.
Half
That's
cab.
an easy one. I never even had a pair of Enigmas.
Okay.
Yeah, so... But, it's different tastes, I guess. But yeah, half cab, for sure.
All right, let's do this one.
Bobby Puleo, how you doing, my friend? This is Donny Barley.
Oh, wow.
Hope you're great today, man. All right, so I was thinking about when that stereo video dropped. I was completely consumed and captured by the greatness of that video and just each individual that was in it. I was fanning out hard on Ethan Fowler and Carl Shipman, and obviously Jason Lee and Chris Pastris, and Mike Frazier was my favorite vert skater. And, I was just curious if you had some cool stories from that time, because I can tell you, I heard you were part of the stereo program, and I just, obviously happy for you, but just the envy, gosh, I wanted to be part of that whole deal. It was the coolest thing, and the music in the video, and that was a special time, and that was powerful how much that brand kind of opened me up to just a different feel. I don't know how to explain it, but you were part of it, and it'd be nice to hear some cool stories if you're willing to share. Thanks, Bobby. Have a good one, brother.
Yeah, Donnie, that's great. Man, that's a random one. So I have a similar, kind of sentiment to Donnie. I was not on stereo when A Visual Sound came out. Mm-hmm. I got asked to be on a little bit later, so I consumed Visual Sound in the same way that Donnie did, kind of total awe. And basically the story goes is, Dune started Metropolitan. And basically he started kind of dipping into his East Coast roots. He was obviously in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, the East Coast had become popular, especially New York skateboarding. And being that I rode for Metropolitan, Dune started putting stereo stuff in my box of Metropolitan stuff. And at the time I was on Zoo. So basically Ryan Hickey and I both got tapped to kind of ride for stereo. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, I heard fairly recently that there was, Joey Alvarez told me that he also got stereo stuff in his Metropolitan boxes as well.
Okay.
So, Joey, I guess it was Cream that he rode for eventually, or, Menace, Cream, whatever, because Cream started quickly after that. I would say Cream started in 95-ish, 95, 96. Or maybe I'm wrong about that timeline. I can't remember. But Joey told me he also would get some stereo stuff, and Dune was also interested in him. So around 1994, 95, I get asked to ride for stereo, and it's basically Ryan Hickey and myself. Mm-hmm. And I was lucky enough, in terms of stories, basically I got asked to go on a deluxe summer tour, basically all the way across the United States. And it was kind of the first time I think I had really ever done that. And basically Mickey Reyes was the team manager at the time. So Mickey was kind of in charge of everything. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you ever heard any Mickey Reyes stories. They kind of, speak for themselves. He's a pretty interesting guy. And it was the craziest group of dudes. It was myself, Kelly Bird, Shawn Mandoli, Drake Jones, Joey Bast, Mike Dare, Huff. I believe Huff was on that. And so it was a real stereo trip. Matt Rodriguez.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And man, I want to say that Matt, myself, and Mike Dare were the only... Oh, Coco Santiago was on that? Mm-hmm. Fuck, and if I'm leaving anybody else out, I can't remember. Ethan wasn't there. Dune wasn't there. Jason wasn't there. Oh, Greg Hunt.
Oh, yeah.
Greg Hunt was there.
Yep,
So for stereo, it was myself, Greg, Matt Rodriguez, and Mike Dare.
Mike Dare, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mike Dare, like, man, I want to say he barely even got out of the van. And then I think he, like, left at some point. Or maybe I'm misconstruing that with another trip that we took. But, yeah, Mike was very quiet. But, yeah, so that was a very, very interesting experience. But in terms of, like, me being part of, quote-unquote, the stereo camp, it was basically, like, I just got, like, boards and T-shirts. I got an ad. Mm-hmm. And then as quickly as I was on, I was off, you know.
Okay, it was that quick, okay.
Yeah, so it was, you know, it was a good little chunk of time. But in terms of, like, I don't even know if it was a year. But, you know, that kind of, like, shocked me. But at the same time, that whole brand was changing. And, you know, by 96, it was almost, like, unrecognizable from the original stereo camp. And I'll also make, I guess, the point that when stereo started, you know, you got to remember, too, it was, like, John Diago and Paulo Diaz and LeVar and Mike York.
Yeah.
So that's, like, an unrecognizable stereo team there.
Sure,
you know,
absolutely. Yeah.
So that's like, I guess, what, 93 to 94, 94 to 95, 95 to 96. I mean, that's, you know. So, yeah, but I was not out in SF. I was not part of the visual sound era, even though I caught the tail end of it.
Yeah,
you know. And I guess the best thing, and this is going back to collecting, the one object that I really wish I had was there was a team board that came out, I guess, around 95, and the entire original team was on there. Mike Frazier, Jason Lee, Dune, Matt Rodriguez, Ethan, Greg, Dare, myself, Ryan Hickey, all on this board. And I was down at the bottom playing the bongos. And luckily, that board is in, Sean Cliver's book. Is it Disposable?
Oh, yeah. Maybe, yeah, I don't remember, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have it, actually. Picture of that board is in there, and I really wish that I had that board, just because when that came out, I was like, holy crap, I'm on a board with Jason Lee.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's crazy.
Dream come true, yeah.
Anyhow, and that's, I believe Todd Francis did that graphic. And, you know, it was cool going to Deluxe, because I would go to Deluxe, and there's Todd Francis working on board graphics. And, you know, I also rode for Spitfire, and I rode for Venture back then. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, Ruben was the team manager of Spitfire. Yeah, it was super interesting, you know, kind of like introduction to San Francisco and the industry in a sense, you know, because when I was a kid riding for Zoo and, you know, whatever, growing up, all that stuff was completely foreign to me. And going to Thrasher was insane too. I think the first photograph I shot when I got out to SF was possibly with Tobin.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember I think it was a Venture ad with Tobin. Yeah, anyhow, interesting time period. But, you know, going back to what Donnie had asked, I was not, like, in the fire at that point. I was observing the same thing he was observing. Yeah. And I was in complete and total awe by it as well. That video had a profound influence on, you know, just about everything that I do, you know, now. So.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Did you turn pro on
stereo?
Or was that later on
Mad Circle?
Mad Circle. Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure.
So I got kind of let go from stereo when I think a lot of things were happening. I think they kept Ryan. Mm-hmm. But then I don't know what Ryan's kind of like story is in terms of like how that ended for him. But, you know, then like Dare left. I mean, eventually Ethan leaves. You know, a lot of them leave.
Yeah.
Greg stuck around. Matt Rodriguez stuck around. And this is going into like Tin Can Folklore era.
Yep.
But yeah, so I quickly, at that point, when I got let go, I was skating with Aaron Meza all the time. And it was basically like me, Huff, Aaron, and Scott Johnson. We would just link up and kind of go out, film, skate. And then I would film with Matt McGrath as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just got absorbed into the Mad Circle thing like almost immediately. It was almost like those guys heard I had gotten let go and they were like, I was on Mad Circle like kind of the next day kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, the other thing too is that I didn't really skate with any of the stereo guys. I never did. The only thing I really ever did was go on that tour and have an ad and that board.
Yeah. Well, it was a short time, so you didn't get to experience much, yeah. Mm-hmm. It flew by quickly.
Yeah. But it was incredible to be a part of, and surreal. In many respects, it's surreal. Like, I don't even think that that's like a real part of like your journey, quote unquote, career or history or whatever. It's super bizarre. Super bizarre. But I will also say that in terms of like a dream come true, it was like the only brand I was interested in back then was stereo, and then to get to ride for them was insane. I remember sitting at my house in Jersey, like UPS would show up or whatever, and I would open up this box, and there was, and if I had all those boards now, I would be like, a little bit more wealthy than I am at this point. Some of those Matt Rodriguez boards, I skated like a bunch of them. Some of the Carl Shipman boards, incredible graphics. And if I would have just took 2 or 3 of them and squirreled them away. Yeah. Anyhow, so that's that. But thanks, Donnie. That was a great question.
Actually, this next question is, you just mentioned this guy, Aaron Meza. He asked, Bobby, set up your ultimate 80s ramp jam moment. Who's ramp? Who's there? Who are we listening to?
Oh.
And bonus question, which song would you have liked to skate to in the FTC video?
Oh my God, that's super funny. Interestingly, I saw somebody the other day take some of my footage from the FTC video and put it to, I can't remember what band it was. Maybe it was like the Sisters of Mercy, or I don't know what it was, but I was just like, I never thought about what song I would have skated to.
Instead of was it Van Morrison, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back and like think to myself, like, what was I listening to at that point? But I could never identify what that would be. And I don't think I was ever asked, like, if you could pick any song to skate to during that time period. Because I didn't get to pick my Mad Circle song either, which was the Pixies song.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that was just a foreign concept to me. Like, I didn't sit down and think to myself, like, about the mechanics of a skateboard video part. But getting to Aaron's question, so, man, that would be... any of the classic 80s vert ramps could kind of, like, fit. But this morning, I was just working on a Spotify playlist for all the songs that are in the 1986 Shut Up and Skate NSA Pro and Am contest that happened at the skate park of Houston.
Okay.
And I was talking to my friend Chris at Same Old, and he was like, we got to do a Spotify playlist. And he had posted some Dan Wilkes footage. And I think in my 9 Club interview, I talked about Dan Wilkes skating to Cream, Strange Brew.
Okay.
And if you watch that clip of Dan Wilkes' run, he does this incredible lean fast plant. Like, just incredible. And then he goes up and does a perfect bean plant to fakie, and then does a fakie, tail grab thruster or whatever. And it's insane because that Cream song is unlike any of the other music in the video. And as I was going through the video, kind of picking out, like, identifying songs, I was just like, man, the other thing is that video exposed me to so much crazy-ass music, like from the Ramones to the Misfits to Chameleons to the Cult, It's pretty crazy. Actually, maybe, I don't know if the Cult is in that video, but, like TSOL, Metallica, Celtic Frost is in there, Merciful Fate is in there. So, I guess in a sense, you could take any classic vert ramp and take any of those classic 10 skateboarders from, Jeff Phillips, Lester Kasai, Mike Smith, Billy Ruff. Anyone. You just insert them in any order, obviously any of the Bones Brigade. But anything and everything from back then is pretty magical. It's also like a pretty kind of like small group of people that you're working with. You're talking like maybe 15 to 20 pros that all are basically, skating vert. They're all pretty much doing like the same tricks. They're just doing it with their own like little personal style, their own flair.
Yeah.
So I really like seeing photographs from Joe Lopes' ramp. Obviously anything out of the skate park of Houston is incredible, especially when it was red. Cedar Crest is probably one of the more magical places, and I kind of strive to go to that space and see that ramp where it was.
Yep.
Obviously, Lance's ramp is insane kind of scenario.
Is that the one that you visited in that?
That is,
piece?
yeah. That was in his backyard.
Right.
And,
I remember seeing that. Yeah, that was cool.
And I guess the other one is Fallbrook, and then Patty's Perfect Ramp in Arizona was pretty magical looking too. But I mean, you know, just as a little kid, like opening up the magazines and looking at these gigantic vert ramps, it was just something we didn't have in New Jersey. We didn't know how to build them. I mean, we had an idea, but there was just not really, I had never really seen like a proper vert ramp. I think until I like maybe even went, one year myself and Mike O'Mealy drove out to Woodward. Mm-hmm. And that might have been the first time I watched Brian Howard skate the vert ramp at Woodward. But, you know, now that I think about it, I also went one day with Aaron Meza, possibly Aaron Meza and Scott Johnson. I went a couple times to Max Schaff's ramp.
Okay.
And one time I was there, I think it was me, Aaron, and Bob Burnquist. And we watched Bob Burnquist skate. And it was crazy.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
So,
wow.
And I think one time I might have gone to Jake's ramp, but I can't remember the different incarnations of that thing. But anyhow, you know, so to get back to Aaron's question, it's interchangeable. Anything and any combination works. You could put any of those classic 80s vert guys in there. You know, any of them are equally as magical. Man, like even like Ken Park. I'll take Ken Park. I don't even care. Like anyone that's in any of those 80s videos is rad to me. You know, so. Oh, but soundtrack wise, I think the best, man, for some reason, and this turned up a lot in those videos, the best soundtrack would either be any of the Cult stuff, Cult Electric, or anything off the TSOL record with Joe Wood singing, who is the second singer of TSOL. I just think that stuff is like, it's kind of like post-punk meets goth, and that stuff to me is like super good. I will admit though, one time I was in Arizona and I was at this bowl contest thing, and I think it was even after one of the later skater cons, and 52 Girls came on by the B-52s, and I was like, holy shit, this is the greatest skate rock song that you would never think is a skate rock song. But I would go with either the Cult or TSOL. Yeah. Okay. Change Today is the record. Incredible record.
All right, let's do this next one.
Bobby Puleo, what's up, Ripper? This is Shawn Mandoli, and my question is, considering the era of skateboarding we're from, like going back mid-90s, I believe I met you summer of 94 in New York, just skating around. You might have been on stereo or about to get on, but anyway, just considering all that, kind of the era we're from and just the culture and the vibe of what it was, what do you see from being from that time and involved of the culture and all that of skateboarding? What do you see that has translated into what you do now? And then also, if you don't mind answering, like what has not translated? What is not something that applies, that's just kind of gone, if you will? So yeah, man, appreciate the opportunity to ask you a question. Love you, bro. Peace.
Yeah. That's great, Shawn Mandoli. I haven't seen or really heard from him. Maybe we kind of chatted on Instagram like a couple years ago, but man, what a rad dude. And going back to that real stereo tour, the little crew was basically Shawn, myself, Joey Bast, and Drake. You know, we were kind of like this little crew that kind of stuck together. And we were also AMs, I think, at that point. Maybe Shawn might have turned pro by that point. But so interestingly, 94 is a heavy one. And I guess in a sense, there's two things that kind of stick out. Obviously, there's tricks that were being done. This is the beginning. And I guess you could really go back to like Girl being a heavy influence, 1993, especially when you look at that Houston contest with the pyramid. And Eric Costin switch 3 flips the pyramid. Mike Carroll switch flips it. So tricks are starting to get kind of popped. You have, and I think I saw like somebody wrote recently like about Eric Costin's switch 3 flip over that pyramid. you know, you're talking about most people couldn't even do a switch 3 flip on flat ground, and he's already doing them over the pyramid. So obviously tricks from that point are starting to get popped, you know, and this is obvious. 92 to 94, things go from lawnmower to like proper height. And then, you know, I guess the other thing, and this is not, I mean, this is part of skateboard culture, but a few weeks ago, I went and saw that Larry Clark show that's on display over there at this art gallery called Rutkowski 68. And the clothing, right? You're going back. Now most of the photographs are 92, 93, early 93. And the clothing is like coming out of this, like the end period of the rave sort of like kind of whatever scene, especially in New York. New York was heavy rave scene, and it butted right up against skateboarding. Obviously it did in San Francisco and Los Angeles as well. But, you know, when you look at how baggy kids wore their clothing, and obviously like cutting the pants too at the bottom, you know, super small wheels. The small wheels are not coming back, but super baggy clothing is coming back, and high waters are kind of coming back or have already come back. And, you know, just in terms of like Shawn's question, I mean, the only other thing that I don't want to say I miss, but, you know, this is blatantly obvious to me. Back then, the time period that Shawn's talking about, you had an obvious pecking order, which meant that if you showed up to the spot, especially the banks, there was obviously the dudes that were in control. Yeah. You know, and you're not getting in their way. You're not even trying to like look at them, you know, whereas nowadays at the skate park and skate park culture and just culturally speaking in general, it's frowned upon to kind of like clown another person or, you know, whatever it is that, you know, kids used to do back then. Yeah. That element in many respects has changed. And I don't want to say it's like for better or for worse, but you know, obviously EMB had a huge kind of like influence on how skateboarders behaved. Yeah. You know, I mean, you could look at EMB and you would tell that like Kelch, there was certain dudes there that was just like, they were kind of running the show, and it was like, you know, you can learn from those people. You know what I'm saying? Like they, in many respects, could teach you how to act in most situations, you know, kind of like don't open your mouth unless you're kind of spoken to, you know, and that goes a long way with like just the way kind of like society sort of works and still works, you know.
Yeah, etiquette.
Yeah, etiquette. Exactly. Don't be a kook kind of thing. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I kind of like, I don't want to say I miss that, you know, because Shawn, I don't think was asking me like exactly what it is that I miss, but
yeah, but what hasn't translated, I guess, was his question, like something that you see is not there anymore, kind of today. Yeah. The other thing is that, you know, skateboarding has kind of fractured into. There's just so many more kids skateboarding, you know, and so it's like it's just definitely devolved into. I mean, fuck, dude, like magazines aren't there anymore. You know, I mean, Thrasher's still in print form, but now everything is digital. Like, you know, I mean, the whole hierarchy of like brands in a sense is gone. You know, back in 94, 95, the time period I guess he was talking about, is like you definitely had these brands that were like just bigger than life, you know? Yeah. I mean, you know, Stereo, World. I mean, I'm not a little kid anymore, you know, and so I, you know, maybe the little kids like, I don't know, Polar or some other brand is that brand. Yeah, but perhaps, you know, you know, the other thing is that once you kind of like go into the other side of the skateboard industry, you see like, you know, some of it is smoke and mirrors and some of it's not, you know. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. A lot of it has to do with just your age in general and what you've been exposed to. So yeah. But great question. Great to hear from Shawn Mandoli as well. All right, let's do this other one.
What was your favorite recent find on the street?
Ooh. Who's that from?
That's Tobin Yelland.
Oh, yeah. Sheesh. My favorite. Yesterday. Oh, this is funny as hell. So 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I take the same particular route to get to the spot that I skate at, and you have to cross these train tracks. And it's not like, you know, it's not out in the freaking wilderness or anything. It's like a very like major it's a major thoroughfare between this one little spot on the Brooklyn-Queens border.
Okay.
And there's this freight line that runs through this one little industrial zone. Huge thing in New York is people dumping garbage. And sometimes you'll come across a huge lot of just personal stuff. And I was riding my bike and I looked over and I saw a photograph. And I love finding photographs because they're super interesting. So 3 days ago, I came across a huge lot of dumped stuff and I started pulling out photographs. And I must have pulled out about 60 photographs. Okay. So, and I pulled out a couple other things, some business cards. This woman owned a spa up on the east side in the 70s, in not the 1970s, in the streets, the 70s.
Okay, yeah.
I think on 76th Street, she owned a spa. And I got her name, and there was all these photographs of her. There was some art there, different stuff. Anyhow, on the way to the spot, the skate spot, I sifted through some stuff, and I was kind of like, in the winter, it gets dark quicker, and so I was kind of pressed for time, and I was like, all right, I kind of sifted through everything, thought I had grabbed everything that I thought was interesting, went to the spot, skated. On the way back, I hit it again, went through more stuff, picked out a couple more photos. The next day, same thing, go to the spot, saw a couple other errant photos that I had missed on the day before.
Yep.
And then same thing the next day, which was actually yesterday. Well, actually the day before that, I had seen there's this big factory there. It's not a factory, it's a parking lot that houses like Frito-Lay. You know what Frito-Lay is? Like Pringles and shit, like potato chips.
Oh, okay, yep.
So there's a Frito-Lay, like whatever facility there. And they just put this big parking lot up, put this big cinder block wall and this big fence with barbed wire. And behind the fence, I could see 4 Polaroids. And I was like, they were just far enough that I couldn't reach them with like my hand like even stuff around. I needed a stick.
Okay.
So yesterday I skated. On the way back, I was looking around and I was like looking for something long to try and grab the Polaroids.
Right.
And I found this thing. It's like the thing you put like where a door opens, to stop things from going underneath the door, like a door stop kind of thing.
Sure, yeah.
And I found a brand new one in the package, and it was like long enough where I was like, oh, maybe this will reach. And then I remembered, I was like, for some reason I thought maybe a little bit further down, there was another pile of garbage over there that was on the sidewalk. And I felt like I remember seeing like a broomstick, and I was like, maybe the broomstick would be better. But as I walked over to get the broomstick, I saw this long ass branch that had broken off the tree and fallen behind a guardrail. And I saw it and I was like, that's perfect. So I broke off this little part that couldn't get underneath the thing, and I went underneath the gate and I used it to kind of swipe. I'm telling you, this stick was at least like, it was probably like a 6 foot long branch.
Okay.
It wasn't even a stick, it was a branch. So I probably looked pretty crazy, like, whatever. But I fully got the 4 Polaroids out.
Okay.
And they're actually right here. Hang on one second.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to answer Tobin's question, this isn't my most favorite thing that I found, but this is the most recent thing that I found. And I feel bad for this woman, and maybe we'll start with one that's not, you could see this.
Yeah, she's like sitting on a rock
Sitting on a rock, okay. And then I think this might be her husband, and that might be the same rock, is it?
Yeah.
Yep, same rock. And then we get into, and this is not like so it's just like a bathing suit. And then this one is kind of cool also.
Okay.
So she's just in a bathing suit, but it's just cool. I don't know. I just like them. They're cool, like Polaroids. And I love finding Polaroids. Because
how old
it's
do
such
you think these are? Like, what time period do you think that's
I would say these are probably somewhere in between, I would say anywhere from 1992 to like 2014. Okay. They could be as old as 2004. These definitely are not 2014, but the batch of stuff that I found, you can see her like aging, which is pretty crazy. I mean, I have a whole, dude, I grabbed so many photographs. I grabbed like tapes. I grabbed just weird shit that I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with it. I mean, the photographs, I have a very large collection of found photographs. So to kind of partially answer Tobin's question is, I like finding photographs. But, same thing with like Aaron Meza's question, like, I like anything that I find. Like, I think anything is cool, you know? So I could find, you know, some of the categories of stuff that I find so much of it because it's repeated in the environment so much from people discarding it, you know, like Advil packs or Tylenol packs or Coca-Cola bottle caps, you know? But every time I find one, it's like, I just love adding it to the collection, you know? Yeah. So it's like, I don't really have like a favorite object. I will, though, say that I do like finding discarded Honda emblems from the fronts of or backs of Hondas.
Yeah, okay.
Because they're rare.
Yeah, I'm sure that that's not something you'd find very easily, right?
No. But interestingly, I found 9 Honda emblems over the course of like 5 years, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And I guess what that means is that Honda is a very popular car, and Honda drivers get into a lot of car accidents.
Oh,
so
okay.
I will also say that Mercedes-Benz logo or emblems, I have about 4 or 5 of those.
Okay.
So, you know, over X amount of years, hopefully
you'll
I'll
have
find
your
9 of
9.
them. Yeah. So that's one category that I don't have 9. That was fairly recently, though. I'm surprised how quickly I found the 9 Honda emblems, you know. Anyhow, thanks for the question, Tobin.
I have kind of a similar, along the same lines, a question from Rich Jacobs.
Oh, yeah.
Who I believe is an artist and curator, friend of yours. He said to ask you, what is the weirdest thing you've ever found in the street that you actually brought home with you? Or if he can't remember, ask what the weirdest thing he ever encountered while going to a skate spot.
Oh, I mean, it's like
Don't get me started. Yeah.
endless stories. Endless stories. One time I almost stepped on 2 deaf people having sex.
No way.
Which is crazy. And, you know, it's funny because I wasn't going skating. I was going to write graffiti. And it was kind of late at night. And I hopped over this guardrail over by the West Side Highway. And I almost stepped on these 2 people that were having sex on the other side of the guardrail. And when they couldn't hear me because they were both deaf people. And when they got up, they like couldn't really talk. That was pretty weird. Another time in Manhattan, very close to that space, this was in the late 90s, I came across a dead deer in Manhattan.
No way. Wow.
Yeah, and I was with Mike O'Mealy, actually, and I think Mike O'Mealy shot a photograph of me next to a dead deer in Manhattan.
Holy shit.
It was on the railroad tracks. It was on the Metro North tracks.
Oh, it was hit by a train or something? Okay.
Yes, it was hit by a train. And it came all the way down from who knows where, but...
Yeah.
There was
get
a
all
deer
the way
carcass.
into New York City. It's
pretty crazy. You know, I mean, shit. Dude, I've come across all kinds of crazy shit. Stabbings, people with needles in their arm, dead people.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh, yeah. One time I was skating this spot that I would skate at all the time. And the night before, I noticed this car running because I went to the diner by my house. And it was pretty late at night. And I skated down from my house, skated past this like parking lot. And I noticed this car running. And I was like, oh, that's weird that the car is running at like 2 a.m, just in a parked, you know, whatever parking lot kind of scenario. And then the next morning, I went down there to skate this ledge I had just built. And I'm condensing this story, but I went down there to skate this ledge that I built. And I noticed the car was still there and it was still running. And then the next thing I know, this dude who was like collecting cans, he started to like scream. And I was looking at him like, what are you screaming about? And he's like, come here. So I went over and I helped him. He's like, hold this open. And I held the back of this like Ford Bronco. I held like the back part of the thing opened, and somebody had stuck a pipe from the tailpipe into the back window of the car. And I lifted it open. He reached in and opened the passenger side back door. And when he did that, I went around and the door opened and there was just a dead guy on the seat laid out. Like a younger, like Puerto Rican dude, probably in his like mid 30s. And he had rigged up the car to, you know, basically suffocate himself.
Yeah, poison him. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
wow.
Really crazy. Yeah, so that's like...
That's gnarly.
You know.
Wow.
But in terms of like picking up stuff and like bringing it home, it's like, you know, I don't pick up like used condoms or anything. So, you know,
that would be a weird collection.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, shit, like anything and everything. Like, you know, you'll see all kinds of crazy shit in New York.
Oh yeah.
You ever look at that Instagram account? What is New York?
I don't think so. No.
I mean, that's a great example of that. Just like the kind of shit you will see in the city. I mean, I'm sure every city's like that. You know.
Yeah.
Paris,
for sure.
London.
But New York is in a category of its own. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure Rich has just as many ridiculous stories as the rest of us. So.
Okay, let's do this one.
Hi Bobby, how are you doing? It's Nicola White here. It seems ages ago since I was over there in New York doing that interview with you, learning all about your fascinating street larking. I so enjoyed meeting you and finding out all about that. So I have a little question for you, and that concerns Post-it notes, because I know you said at the time that you enjoyed finding those, and in fact you had loads and loads. Have you found a Post-it note recently which really jumps out for you, something that might have been written on it a little bit odd, or what is your favourite Post-it note that you have found recently, or it could be your favourite one in your collection? So that is my first question. My second question is, do you still have that artwork that you made using 9 butterflies? Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about that, to be honest, because butterflies are really my thing. And so I wondered if you still had it, because I might possibly like to buy it if you do have it. Okay, well, keep up the great work, and I'm really enjoying keeping an eye on your Instagram site, seeing what you've been picking up on the streets of New York, and I hope to get over there again sometime myself in the not too distant future. Take care, speak soon, and have a great weekend. Bye.
Man, that is amazing. You know, a huge smile came on my face. That woman influenced me immensely, because, you know, she basically, when I saw that, and I will also say, my friend Alyssa exposed me to her YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. I was fascinated. It's so interesting to me. And the idea of her, like when I first started watching her YouTube channel, it's similar to like being on the board with Jason Lee. You know, like I couldn't believe that Nicola White was in New York, and I was hanging out with her at that space doing that interview. I mean, that was crazy. So interestingly, and I might have talked about this with her in that interview, but Post-it notes are kind of like, they're sort of like a dying breed of keeping track of things these days, because everybody uses their phone for everything. But I do have... So everything that I get, I kind of like bring it home and I kind of stash it on my floor. And then eventually I start to kind of catalog everything.
Right.
And I have my master collection of Post-it notes right there. But give me a second. I just want to see if there's anything on the floor right here, which I think, I'll show you probably the last Post-it note that I picked up. 1 second.
Okay.
So I have the last Post-it note that I picked up. And unfortunately, it's not very interesting. And it says, it's just measurements. But, this is the nature of the Post-it note. It says 29 by what looks like maybe 27.5 or 775. I can't really make that out. Minus 225, minus 50x times 100, minus 175, poly AR. So I don't know if you can really see that.
Yeah.
But that is the last Post-it note that I picked up off the ground. And, to be honest, that might have even come from somewhere near that batch of stuff that I found the other day.
Okay.
But in terms of favorite Post-it note, and the other thing is, when we did that interview, I pointed out all of the collection of ones that just said free on them. Just the word free.
Yeah.
And that's a common one, because a lot of times on the streets of New York, sidewalks, people will put out objects and they'll put a little Post-it note on it. It just says free.
Like
free stuff,
help yourself.
whatever.
Yeah.
So I really like that. I like those. But again, same thing. I just like any Post-it note that I see. And for a second there, I will admit, I would pass by Post-it notes and not pick them up, because I was like, well, I don't know how long Post-it notes are still going to be a thing. But I go through phases where I just pick up anything and everything that I think is going to be, that I could use.
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't make any sense, because people are probably watching this and being like, what do you use it for? But I guess my ultimate goal is to, at some point, show off the master collections of the categories, you know?
Yeah.
So, or do a book or whatever. So now I'm kind of back to like, if I see a Post-it note, I'll pick it up. One thing that's common, and I know I'm kind of like, you know, venturing off the question, but one thing that I see often that I won't pick up is pennies.
Okay.
You know what a penny is?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So 1 cent. And I guess in the EU it would be €1.
Yes, des centimes in French. Yeah. Centimes. Mm-hmm.
So you know, and sometimes I'll be riding my bike and I just don't, you know, I skate with my bag and my board attached to my bag, you know, from spot to spot or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's just like too much of a pain in the ass to like bend over and pick up a penny. So I'll kind of like pass those by. And that was the case for a little while there with Post-it notes, where I was just like, I don't need another nondescript Post-it note. But there's been so many different things written on Post-it notes. You can't even begin to describe, you know, like the amount. It's anything and everything. So it's difficult to say like, oh, I really like this one, because there's like literally thousands and thousands of them, to the point where I can't remember.
Yeah, it's difficult.
You know. In that video, though, I think I show her maybe 3 that had this. I think the guy's name was Henry Lee, and there was like, it was really interesting handwriting. And for anyone that's listening to this, go and watch that interview, because we talk about it in there.
Yeah, it's a great interview. Super
interesting. For some reason there was like I found 3 or 4 Post-it notes with this guy called Henry Lee's name written on it, and I really like those. But the free ones are really, really interesting, and I haven't found one in quite a bit of time that said free. But and just to answer the butterfly thing, she was pretty enamored with that butterfly thing. But I hate to say it, Nicola, but it might not be for sale yet. And I would if Nicola wanted a piece of my art, I wouldn't make her pay for it. I mean, that's crazy. But I have a hard time giving up things that I'm like. So just to get back to the concept of the butterflies, now that I have like maybe, I don't know, 40 different little butterflies, my goal would be to amass 81 of them.
Oh, yeah.
So to give away 9 would set me back.
Yeah.
You know. But maybe the goal or the solution to that is to do prints, and like, you know, that would make something accessible to someone. But I know Nicola would probably want the original. Like
the originals.
Who wants a print, you know?
She's going to have to wait until you gather 81.
Yeah, well, no, she would have to wait until I gather
90.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyhow, great question, Nicola. Thank you. And yeah, great to hear from you.
This one is from Chris Parkinson from Same Old.
Yeah.
He said, I heard a rumor you were supposed to be in Larry Clark's film Kids, but you didn't turn up for the audition?
That's untrue.
Okay.
Untrue.
What's the story?
I never got asked to be in Kids. In fact, I kind of sat there and watched them film parts of it and thought to myself, this is like kind of the worst thing I've ever seen. Like, I felt bad for my friends who had to like not be able to go skating that day or whatever day what it was, and had to be like in this film production, because at the time I thought it was just like a student film or some shit. I didn't know who Larry Clark was, or maybe I did, and I didn't know like it would become such a cult classic. But no, I was never asked to be in it. Larry did shoot photographs of me at the banks, but he also shot photographs of tons of other people that day. Plenty of other people that weren't in the film. And also Larry shot photographs of myself in other situations pertaining to the crew of people that I hung out with at the time. But I never got formally asked, and I don't know where he heard that rumor. But yeah, I will say that there is a story that Quim Cardona was supposed to play the part of Tully, and Quim's mom shot it down. She read the script. She might have even known who Larry Clark was and said no. And that's how Leo got the part.
Leo Fitzpatrick,
Yeah, that's how he ended up. And there might have even been another person who was also potentially going to be that character as well, but I can't remember what Leo said about that. But yeah, that was originally supposed to be, Larry wanted Quim to be Tully, which is similar to that rumor. But yeah, I never got asked, and I was around everybody though when they were filming, and I watched it, and it was completely cringy. And I thought it was funny, and I thought it was, whatever. And you know what? To be honest, if I did get asked to be in that film, there's no way I would have been in it because I wasn't trying to do that,
Yeah.
And it took up a big chunk of those people's time and energy. I was trying to skate,
Yeah, for sure.
Anyhow, great question.
This next one is from Waylon Bone.
Yeah.
He said to ask you what the Cecil Hotel documentary was about. Did I say that right, Cecil?
Cecil Hotel,
Cecil.
Yeah. So, if I'm not mistaken, the Cecil Hotel was a flop house. Am I remembering this correctly? I might have to... What that documentary was about was a flop house on the Bowery.
Okay.
And it was basically about the inhabitants of the Cecil. Now, do you know what a flop house is?
I'm not sure, no.
It's like where you can go and get a room for it's like a SRO, like single room occupancy, but it's even smaller. It's almost like a homeless shelter that you pay for,
Okay.
And some people live there for long term, but let's look this up. Let me see, the Cecil Hotel. Oh, wait a second. So the Cecil Hotel is in Los Angeles. Okay, so different documentary.
Okay.
So the Cecil Hotel is in Los Angeles, and it's funny that he asked that because at the time that he probably heard that I had watched that, or I definitely posted about it in my Instagram account.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a documentary that came out on Netflix about this woman who disappeared at the hotel. Okay, it was kind of a big story, maybe 5 years ago or whatever. And I watched the documentary on Netflix, and I remember thinking to myself, this shit doesn't make any sense. The story, as you kind of get it from the director of the documentary, tried to basically pose the scenario, this woman disappearing. But when I watched the documentary, I thought it was basically... I came to a different conclusion.
Okay.
And the conclusion I came to, and this might sound a little kind of wonky, but the conclusion I came to is that you were essentially watching a fake or a hoax documentary that was designed to lead you into, kind of shape the way you think about things,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you go to my Instagram account, I can't remember the nuances of this thing, but I wrote about it on my Instagram account. And you would have to go back and or I would have to go back and kind of because I don't really remember exactly what I thought the reason that Netflix would produce a quote unquote hoax documentary. Now,
mm-hmm.
Granted, I guess I'll say that they were not trying to have you believe by the production that it was a hoax documentary or a mockumentary. They were actually producing a piece of propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been other films and quote-unquote documentaries on Netflix and different outlets that I think are specifically built to influence the way society interprets certain events.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And this is a long-standing practice of this apparatus. I mean, I don't want to call it Hollywood, and I don't want to call it the Central Intelligence Agency or any different, kind of apparatus, because it's a bit of a murky thing. But essentially, the way these organizations operate is they're designed to influence your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Cecil Hotel documentary, I thought, was there to basically to influence the way the public digested this story about a missing person. For whatever reason, I can't remember exactly what it was that I kind of concluded. But, if you follow my Instagram account, you'll see that I have a wide array of opinions and interpretations of things that are not the average person's, take on things.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, a great example would be, I don't know if you saw the post that I made about Robert Kennedy and his assassination at the Ambassador Hotel.
I don't remember that one. When
do you remember
was that one?
That was when Tony Hawk was looking for that skateboarder dude in Central Park. Do you remember that photograph?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so a friend of mine, well, an acquaintance of mine, we were only friends on Instagram. We've never actually met in person. But this dude, Blizzard of Oz, he sent me a picture and this story about this dude. And I looked at it and I was like, he pointed something out. And I was like, damn, I think you're right about this. And he pointed out the fact that when this photographer built, I can't remember the photographer's last name, but he's the dude that shot the famous photograph of that dude that Tony Hawk became infatuated with in Central Park, in the pork pie hat and the nice suit on the skateboard. In that batch of photographs, this dude, Blizzard of Oz, thought that he had located this character that showed up at the RFK assassination at the Ambassador Hotel, the little busboy dude, Juan Romero. And so I started looking at it and I was like, damn, dude, I think you're right. And I started going through the photographs that were in Life magazine at the time. And this is the Life magazine with Patty McGee on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And we started talking about, I started looking at the photographs and I said to myself, God damn, not only is he there, but I think that Sirhan is in this batch of photographs too. Now, Sirhan is the guy that is blamed for shooting RFK. And not to go into a long rabbit hole, but basically my conclusion was that there was some fuckery going on. Okay. And that essentially there was some organization that was sought to influence, and I think the main gist is traumatizing. They use this stuff to kind of like traumatize the public. And basically I kind of thought to myself, like, I think there's more that meets the eye to this whole story.
Yeah.
Now, it's not far-fetched to think that there's organizations out there that seek to influence society by traumatizing them through a fake story or whatever it is, because this is the way organizations basically stay in front of their detractors or revolutionaries, if you will. You know, you can effectively control society's movements by affecting what they think, one way or the other. So the idea, and like I said, going back to my Instagram account, the idea that there are these, I mean, it's kind of well documented that X alphabet agency or X, Y, or Z or whoever has long used propaganda to influence the movements of whole factions of people, you know? So getting back to Waylon's question, the Cecil Hotel documentary was an example of something that I watched and I thought to myself, I think there's a slightly more going on here. Another great example, and I'll try to make this brief, was I recently watched a documentary produced by whomever about the Stanford prison experiment. Okay? And I watched that. I was watching it with my girlfriend, and I was like, damn, I started watching, like, it was 3 episodes, and I got through the third one, and I said to myself, man, it seems like this that Stanford prison experiment was done to justify the movements of a group of people with an event that then followed the Stanford prison experiment. I think 3 weeks later, they had the Attica prison riots.
Okay.
And I said to myself, it almost seems like the Stanford prison experiment was done to justify the actions of people or soldiers or whatever, the outcome of the Attica prison riot. And I started to kind of like think to myself, like, I feel like this documentary is like an apologetic,
a justification.
Yes, exactly. Propaganda to kind of like, because the Attica prison riot should have basically reorganized or restructured the entire U.S. prison system, but it kind of didn't. And the prison system has been able to because if you think about things that would be under scrutiny, it would be the way, the prison system. Now, obviously, it's a very complex, group of whatever, but, yada, yada, yada. That's basically, so I think that's why Waylon was asking about that. And I like I said, I'd have to go back and revisit
your post. Yeah.
Basically, the point is that Netflix is an arm of the propaganda entertainment complex, if you will. Hollywood, in a sense. Like all these movies that come out that kind of like, strangely predict future events. Well, they're not predicting it. This is a scripted thing that they're following, and they're using it to basically prep your mind for what is about to kind of happen. Yeah. And then that event is also staged, and it's done to basically terraform society's movements, And, I don't want to make myself sound completely crazy, but that's essentially what he was asking about.
Okay. No, it's
great
interesting.
question.
You said rabbit hole earlier, and that's definitely a rabbit hole you could get lost into. Yeah.
It's almost like, and you know, since January 1st, especially in the United States, well, even going back a little ways with the Luigi Mangione thing, and then the LA fires, and then the 2 like supposed terrorist attacks on New Year's Eve. It's just been event after event after event, and you can go down the rabbit hole with any one of these events. You know, they all are bizarre stories that kind of seem a little bit off, you know, but it's like, don't look too deeply into them because, you know, just kind of stay on course, you know, or that's the narrative. Don't look over here, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's, I think, the gist of Waylon's question.
Okay. This next one I have is from Kris Markovich.
Oh, wow.
All right, so he said, ask him if he can tell you any stories from the Giant/Big Brother Truth or Consequences tour.
Yeah.
And if he still has his Mike Tyson denim vest.
Oh, I do know what he's talking about, because he wore that. He wore a Mike Tyson. I think he filmed a clip in his Mike Tyson denim vest in that Albany pool. I think if you watch his Element part, or maybe, I can't remember what video it is, but he's wearing this crazy-ass vest. Kris Markovich is a crazy-ass dude. He's one of the craziest skateboarders I've ever witnessed in front of my own eyes. Like, when you think he skates fast on video, but when you watch him in real life, like, it's insane. The craziest story, and this is like, you know, I mean, will be with me forever, but the story from that tour is we were all skating Indian School Ditch in New Mexico, and we were skating this one little part of Indian School Ditch. I don't know if you're familiar with Indian School Ditch, but it's this really long, mile-long ditch in Albuquerque.
Okay.
And, you know, you'll see it turn up in clips.
Yeah, I'm sure I must have seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like basically the closest you're ever going to get to like snowboarding on a skateboard, because you can just go for miles and just carve this ditch. Anyhow, we were skating this one little part of it.
What year would that have been? Do you remember?
96, 97. And we were skating this one part, and I tried to ollie this. There's a small hip there, and there was this like pole in the dirt, and you could ollie the hip from in front of the pole, or you could try and go behind the pole.
Okay.
And obviously going behind the pole was a little bit further, and I tried to ollie behind the pole, and I hung up coming into the hip, and I slammed onto my side, and I ruptured my spleen. That was the amount of like force that I hit the floor with.
Damn.
And when I got up, I was kind of like, I knew immediately that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And it was very, very scary, because I was kind of like, am I gonna die?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my God.
And basically, like, as soon as I got up, the whole crew was there. Blake Hannon, he was the team manager. I think Kenny Reed was there. I think Billy Pepper was there. We were on a crazy-ass Giant tour, and basically, I was like, dude, I think I need to go to the hospital. And so Kris, if I'm not mistaken, Kris got in the van, and this was like before freaking cell phones and like maps and shit, you know, Google Maps. And Kris just hightailed it, like drove like a fucking maniac, getting me to a hospital. And, you know, I don't want to say he like saved my life, but, you know, because, you know, I don't know how like spleens work, but I don't think I could have gone like 24 hours with the situation, you know.
Yeah.
But he got me to the hospital so quickly. But one of the craziest things, as that was unfolding, I remember kind of sitting in the van, like in between Kris driving. I forgot who was in shotgun, but I was kind of like in the middle, like looking to figure out what the fuck was going to happen, because I was so scared.
Yeah.
And I could kind of feel like, I guess it was like I was bleeding internally when you rupture your spleen, and I could kind of like I think I felt like my blood pressure kind of starting, so I was kind of like starting to, but I was also super nervous.
Yeah,
because
anxious.
I was like, I was anxious, I was scared. And so, yeah, Kris drove me to the hospital like a fucking champ, like just as fast as he skated. And and I went into the hospital, and I went basically right into surgery, and I had part of my spleen removed in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Wow.
And, you know, I mean, for me, that was like a very traumatic experience in my life. And to think that Kris Markovich was like part of it is so crazy.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Wild.
It's super crazy. But yeah, so I spent a good amount of time with him on that trip. And he probably remembers that too because, you know, but Kris has probably found himself in plenty of wild ass situations.
Yeah,
you know, whatever. I mean, it's Kris Markovich, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, super interesting. Anything else, to be honest, I don't remember anything else except that portion of that. Oh, sorry. I do remember being in New York. Now, I can't remember if this is the same trip, but Blake Hannon was there, and we were in New York, and we stayed at the Chelsea Hotel. Mm-hmm. And I have these rad photographs of Blake, Carl Watson. Now I can't remember now if that's a different tour though, but I have a rad photograph of Carl Watson at the Chelsea Hotel. It might have been a second. I can't remember.
It's all blurring
but that
together,
particular trip, that particular time period that Kris is talking about, that's the only thing I remember. You know, and. Yeah, it's crazy. And the other crazy thing is that the doctors were able to save half of my spleen. And then, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years later, I ruptured the other half of it, the saved half, because I was at a skate park on an Enjoy trip. And me and Jose Rojo collided midair, ollieing over a pyramid.
I remember you telling about this on the 9 Club, yes.
Yeah, which is crazy, too.
Yeah.
Super crazy.
And so what happened then? Did you have like a how do you say, a transplant, or like what?
No, they just removed it. They just removed the other half. Yeah, I ruptured that.
So you don't need it to survive? Like you don't?
No, you don't need it, apparently. It's like your appendix or something.
Okay,
so yeah. It is fucking weird shit.
Yeah. Wow.
But that's the only thing I remember from that. Oh, I'm sorry. I also remember skating that pool where Kris is wearing the
denim vest.
The denim vest, because somehow the dudes that brought us out to that pool, and I don't know if you remember this, but in my Mad Circle 5 flavors part, I have a frontside pivot to fakie in that pool, which the pool didn't go up to vert. It wasn't like a real pool. It was just like a big slanted like transition like. It was crazy to skate it, but they brought a generator and we lit the pool up, I think, or maybe they just used the generator for music. But I'll never forget, they played Guns N' Roses song, Welcome to the Jungle.
Okay.
And you know how that song kind of kicks in? Like when that song kicked in, it's like sparked something in Markovich, and he just became a fucking animal in that pool and did the craziest shit. But yeah, I mean, so yeah. And I don't know if you follow Kris Markovich on Instagram, but he's still skating at like 100%.
Yeah, his clips
it's
are
totally
mad.
It's totally crazy.
Incredible.
He's like a fucking machine.
Yeah. Doing super tech shit like cap back nose blends.
Super incredible shit. It's like grade A. Yeah. Awesome.
He's a madman. I mean, I don't know him, but from the outside, he seems like he's possessed.
Super awesome dude. And you know, the great thing about Markovich is that he's got such a long history, so you could go back to like the GNS days and like you know, I mean, dude, what a crazy, he skated for GNS 101. I mean, those two alone are like super legendary, you know. So
for sure.
Anyhow, yeah, great to hear from him as well. That's awesome.
All right, let's do this one.
Yo, Bobby, what's up? I hope you're well, mate. You stayed with me for a little bit of time about 20 years ago. I think it was like 2005-ish or something, as part of a trip you were on. And obviously I have my own recollection of it, as I was meeting you for the first time and skating with you for the first time and, you know, spending some time and talking about various shit. But I'd be curious to know what you remember of it, what you thought about your stay, what you thought about, what you had to say about this city in particular. Maybe the whole trip that you were on at that time, and even that time in your life in general, what was happening and stuff like that. All right. Take care, mate.
Yeah, Soy. Yeah, that's crazy. I stayed with him with Jack Sabback, and to be honest, I had been to Paris before, and so I went to Paris with Mad Circle, but this was like 10 years earlier. Or whatever, you know, 8-10 years earlier.
Yeah, mid-90s, yeah.
Yeah, so staying with Soy, I just remember I really liked getting up and going. I remember eating these freaking delicious, what do you call those, spacing on the name of this food, a quiche. Oh my God. Soy had this quiche spot down the block from his house.
Yeah.
I super love breakfast and I love coffee. So I loved getting up and being in Paris. And I mean, Paris is a freaking crazy ass city. It's super unlike New York because same thing with London. You're just talking about these like winding little alleyway streets and like, but one of the things that we did, Soy took us up to this spot that was up on this hill, this like little neighborhood up there. And I'd have to like look at a map and, you know, whatever. But apparently it was like a big like little artist enclave up there. I can't remember the name of the neighborhood or whatever. But I also remember Soy pointing out, we were sitting down by this big set of stairs that I think was over there. It was kind of like a little bit of like a tourist attraction. I can't remember what was up the set of stairs, but I remember him pointing out these like either Algerian kids or Moroccan kids, and they were pickpockets.
Oh, okay.
And I remember him pointing out like, oh, these dudes are like targeting other tourists in this little zone. I also remember the little section where I think Soy lived at was like a very like there was like a lot of African people that lived there in this like little zone. But, you know, I will admit, I also stayed with, in Spain, I stayed with Javier.
Sarmiento?
Yeah. No, Javier...
Mendizabal?
Yes. And
he skated for Cliché back in the day?
Yes. His flat and, like, that scenario was very similar to staying at Soy's place, too. I mean, obviously, I know it's Spain and France, different. Yeah. But just, like, the kind of, like, scenarios, like, these, like, little... Soy's house was not like a skate house, where Javier's was like also not a skate house, but at the time we had a bunch of people staying there on the floor. I think Tony Cox might have lived there. I think maybe Kenny Reed lived there as well. I can't remember. But you know, different scenarios. I'm not a traveler guy, and I don't do well in like crashing on the floor scenarios, you know, like I don't like to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I remember Soy's house was very well kept, and it was very like, he's not like a chaos agent either, so that was a very pleasant experience. The other crazy thing that I remember about going to Paris in general, I can't remember which time, was going into those catacombs. And I probably bugged Soy about going into the catacombs, but he was probably like, I ain't fucking with that shit. I took the like tour thing.
Yeah.
And man, so fascinating. Just to be around.
I've never done it myself. I should check it out.
Dude.
I live here, but yeah.
You got it. You live in Paris?
I do, yeah.
Dude, you're blowing it if you don't go and do that. It is fascinating shit.
I mean,
In fact, I would say that's like on top 10 things I've ever done in my life.
Really?
That's
wow.
one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And I would love to go like to the other parts, but apparently it's getting harder and harder to do. I don't know. But, you know, there's this really fascinating documentary that's online about the Paris catacomb system. And it's about this graffiti writer who wrote Psy, P-S-Y.
Okay.
And he documented a lot of the catacomb system with, you know, I guess by himself or with this filmmaker. And also just like tagging the whole thing, you know, and like he created art down there, really interesting. I can't remember the name of the documentary though, but if you go online and look it up, it's
I'll try to find it.
Yeah, really great documentary.
I need to go check it out. Yeah,
really, and that experience is super interesting just because of what it is. But so I don't remember shit. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, awesome skateboarder, great dude. I love Soy.
Okay, I have this one from Eric Swisher from the Crowball incident.
Yeah.
All right, so he said, "Hey Bobby, I'm not even a shoe guy, but I've always been fascinated by your love of skating in Nike Air Force Ones.
Yeah.
Or as you called them, Psyche Nair Farce Nuns. I hope I said that right. So how did you start skating in them? What do you like about them? And what modifications, customizations do you make?
Yeah.
I know you were cutting off the logos there for a while. I hope all is well."
Yeah. So that's a fairly recent thing, last 10 years.
Okay.
So when iPath went out, I shouldn't say went out. When I basically left iPath, stopped wearing them, they kind of then went out of business. I was kind of like, what shoes do I wear? And basically, I live in Queens, obviously a very urban area, and there's all these sneaker shops all over the place over here. And I was walking past these sneaker shops, and the Air Force One is like basically like the New York City, like, shoe of choice.
Yeah.
The low tops, pretty much. But anyhow, I was like looking at these like mid tops in this window, and I was like, fuck, they're $100 a pop. But I was like, I'm gonna give it a try. And so one day I just bought a pair and I skated in them. And I don't know if you know anything about Air Force Ones, but the soles are very thick.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I skated in them one day. I went to a skate park out in Long Island with a friend of mine, and I was like, damn, I don't know if I could even wear these. And then for some reason, I just kind of stayed with them. And yeah, I've just been kind of like addicted to them ever since. Like, obviously the Grasshopper is when iPath, they're making it again, but it was a thicker shoe, and it was reminiscent of old skate shoes from the late 80s, Vision Streetwears, whatever. But yeah, basically, as the story goes, I rode those Rowleys and I wore the half cabs. And after a period of 10 years or so, like, I felt like I needed like a thicker, larger, more supportive shoe. I felt like the Vans were starting to kind of like hurt my feet. Because this is before Vans and like a real sneaker revolution with construction happened. So yeah, Matt asked me to ride I kind of stumbled upon the Grasshopper. I was like, oh, this looks like a thicker kind of shoe. I started getting the iPaths. Matt asked me to ride for iPath. I went to Japan with iPath, which was crazy. That was a wild ass crew of people. I can't remember exactly who was on that trip. Anyhow, and then, so when the iPath thing kind of, iPath got bought by Timberland, and I was kind of like, they sent me a pair of shoes. Timberland started to like reconstruct the way that they built the shoe. And something felt off. So I was like, they wanted me to sign a contract. They were starting to put like people that weren't traditionally related to the brand on the team. And I was kind of like starting to kind of just drift apart. And I stalemated on signing the contract, and I just never signed it. And they were like, all right, whatever. So that put me in a situation where I was like, now I got to find a new pair of shoes to wear. And I kind of drifted between like possibly like a non-skate Adidas shoe. Well, Vans at the time made this one shoe that I really liked, and it was part of their like weird art shoe thing. And it was this like Japanese designer. I have it on in some of my footage in my V5 part.
Okay.
I think the ollie up onto that little doorstep, ollie across the tail slide into that door, I think I'm wearing that shoe. But that shoe like quickly like became very hard to find after a little while. But it had a strap, I think, just like the Grasshopper had a strap. And so what I realized is that those mid-top Air Force Ones had this strap, and I was like, oh, I think I like the strap experience thing. So I found myself purchasing a pair of Air Force Ones, and then I was like, but this was right as Nike was like starting to was firmly back in the game.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I can't support Nike being in skateboarding, because what was happening was like they were starting to kind of like destroy, and this is, this gets a little murky, but what I thought was they were making it hard for traditional skateboard brands. I mean, look at Lakai. Like, Lakai's gone. There's been so many brands that have just been like evaporated. Now, to blame that on Nike is unfair, but
they started a movement, kind of.
Yeah, and Berto at Consolidated called it a long time ago with the "don't do it" thing, and it was kind of like he knew what would happen if you let these large corporations into skateboarding. But to blame your brand going under because of that is definitely unfair. But there's something happening there. So I would basically remove all the Nike logos off of my shoes that I was purchasing. And at one point, I think I wrote in an interview or something, I think I said Psyche, S-I-K-E, which is psych you out, psych out. Nair, you know what Nair is?
No, I don't think so, no.
It's like a hair remover product.
Okay.
So I was calling Air Nair because I was removing the logo.
Right.
And then Force was farce. and then one became none because there was no logo. So it was Psyche, Nair, Farce, Nuns. So that's what Eric's talking about. And I still wear them, and I think it's the best skate shoe I ever wore. And no one else wears them because they're super thick and they're like, fucking like cinder blocks on your feet. But I love them. I can wear them right out of the box and for some reason. I love a thicker shoe that you can kind of like. A lot of like my skateboarding has been based around like looking down at my feet, and most skateboarders will probably attest to that the shoe you put on is a pretty large part of your persona and your psychological, kind of
how are you going to skate that day? And
exactly. So I have a hard time skating in shoes that the sole matches the color of the upper, Like I have a hard time wearing all black shoes where the sole is black and the upper's black. All white gets a little wonky these days, Like I like to have like a darker color upper and a white sole, That's like, and then white laces. The other thing is like, I was saying before about my photos and shorts, like I've really only had a few photographs where I've been wearing a shoe where my sole is the same color as my upper, and yada yada yada. So I'm like very like much, I wouldn't be able to skate if I didn't have like the right things, like the right products that like. And I also, at this point, I don't even change my accessories for a long time. Like I wear them until they're dead. Because I don't really like change, which is crazy. Right now, I'm riding these wheels that I've been riding for like way too long. I think with the snow, I'm gonna do like a little board switch my wheels.
Yeah, you might have to. Yeah.
So that's the nature of Eric's question. It's funny.
Yeah, very cool.
I might have mentioned that actually in the Chrome Ball incident interview I did.
Maybe, I didn't remember, but you might have. Yeah.
Anyhow. His, shit, man. He's a serious documentarian.
He's my like one of my. I don't know if I can call him my mentor, but he's definitely someone I look up to. Like he's for me, his interviews are among the very, very best in skateboarding.
Oh, they're so
detailed and well researched, and yeah. He's the best.
Yeah, seriously.
All right, this one is from Louie Barletta.
Oh wow.
He said to ask you about breaking your wrists in Hawaii 1 hour into the Hawaii Enjoy trip.
Yeah, terrible scenario.
Yeah, that must have sucked.
We flew to Hawaii, and for me, what's crazy about Hawaii is that to get to Hawaii from California is 6 hours.
Yeah.
Which is the equivalent of flying from New York to LA. To California.
Right.
So it's far out there, and I was already had flown from New York to LA. I think I stayed in San Jose for quite a bit of time though, and we went out to Hawaii to do a thing. And I didn't break my wrist. I broke like a bone in my hand.
Oh, okay.
So it was close to my wrist, but it turned out to be a bone in my hand, and it's still disfigured to this day. But we went to this, we landed, got to the hotel, and then went to this skate park, and I literally broke my hand almost first thing out of the gates. Damn. It's fucking terrible. And instead of flying home, I stayed on the trip with a cast on my hand and couldn't skate, couldn't go swimming, couldn't do anything. And then whatever. But that was terrible. And like I said, I don't like traveling, so to be in that scenario was just torturous.
I'm sure.
These guys skating all this stuff,
and so you said your hand is still not.
Yeah, my hand
fully
is
recuperate
still slightly disfigured from it. I have a big bump where you won't be able to see it, but I have a big bump. And what's crazy is that this is going to be a little weird, but when I was a kid, I was double jointed, and I was able to press my finger all the way back. And I used to be able to do both of them, but now I can't do this one. I can't do this one because of
it's back to normal, I guess, for
back to normal, exactly.
What you did with your other hand is messed up.
Yeah, I can touch my finger all the way back. I don't know. I can't do it with my other fingers, and I don't know how.
Just with this one, okay.
Yeah, I don't know how I discovered that because it's kind of weird, and I haven't done that in a long time, so it was a little bit difficult. But I can bend my finger and touch my.
Wow!
Super weird. They call it double jointedness. That's what my mom called it. So,
okay.
Yeah. Louie Barletta, man, what a character.
Yeah, it sure is. Okay, this one is from Jack Sabback, and he asked about something you just kind of mentioned. He just asked your thoughts on the iPath reboot.
I mean, that's a heavy question. You know, how do I even like address this? I mean, when you ride for a brand, you get to be involved in the seeing the mechanics of the brand, you know? Mm-hmm. And let's put it this way. Kenny Reed is now kind of like in charge of the reboot. Mm-hmm. And he sent me some shoes. He sent me the Grasshoppers, and I pulled them out of the box, and they look great. They look like legit OG Grasshoppers. There was part of me that wanted to kind of put them on and try them.
Try. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I will admit, I'm so addicted to, and addicted is the wrong word, but the Air Force One, I like it so much that I'm like, I don't want to go through the process of having to try and switch
readapt
into this
to a
other
whole
shoe.
new shoe. Yeah.
You know, I don't need to. And so I guess in a sense, like, I don't know, it's like being happily married and like, you know,
yeah.
I was just like, I don't need it. Now, granted, you know, they didn't come to me with a monetary offer. That could have influenced me, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, just being honest.
Yeah, sure.
And they didn't come to me and say, hey, we'll let you design your own shoe. That would have influenced me because I would have basically built an Air Force One.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And I will admit, the Air Force One, part of what's different between... Now, the Grasshopper was basically built using an Air Force One, mm-hmm. but when you get into the Air Force One mid-top, the tongue is much longer, and I love a longer tongue. There's just different things that are different about the two shoes. And, you know, any normal person would have been like, just do it, you know, like whatever. Mm-hmm. But that's just me. Like, I'm just not. So, you know, I mean, shit, if they want me to ride for that, you know, for iPath, it's also like iPath, when it went out, I wasn't very pleased with how things were operating there.
Okay.
So when it was done, when it was on its last legs, I was kind of like, kind of good riddance, you know, because it had diverted so far away from what it kind
originally
of was when you know, it went through a huge process. You know, like I said, you know, Timberland basically, it was like wearing a different shoe when Timberland took it over.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I didn't experience any of like the monetary benefits from Timberland taking it over. When I had heard that Timberland was going to take it over, I was like, oh, maybe I'll get a pay increase. Mm-hmm. And nothing happened. And that kind of like bummed me out because I was like, how are you going to let this corporate
company,
manufacturer come into skateboarding and not let any of like, you know, your kind of like rank and file types benefit from it? The people that like build the brand or advertise and are the
ambassadors. Yeah.
The ambassadors, exactly. So the reboot now is, from the way I understand it, it's, you know, the original owner who I've never met, but, you know, it's like I don't really need to like ride, you know, I'm not trying to like do that. I could, like I said, if there was, you know, maybe like a larger sum of money involved, that might influence me. I'm not saying like, hey, I would be all for it, you know, like, because essentially, like, you know, like I said, you're talking about disrupting my
your habits.
Exactly.
Sure.
And like, that's not something I am excited about.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, and I'm also not saying that having your habits disrupted from time to time is not a good thing. But there was just nothing.
You need to do it for a good reason. Yeah.
There was just nothing
to be
there.
Motivated.
Yeah. So, you know, did I miss out on an opportunity? Maybe. I don't know. So, but that's kind of like
time
where
will
I'm
tell.
at. Yeah. And, you know, if that's the case, I'm still happy with my Air Force Ones, you know?
Well, yeah.
So, and it's funny because every time I post any footage, people are always like, what shoe is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I tell them the Psyche and Air Force Done.
Let's see. This next one is from Eli Gesner.
Oh, wow.
From New York, yeah. Okay, so let's see. We said, Bobby already knows this, but I'm a super fan of his art. I wanted to know more about that. How many completed pieces does he have of his found discarded street items? How many more pieces does he think he could make? And please let me know whenever he has an art show going on.
That's funny. Yeah, great question. So my work, there's multiple different sort of facets to the work that I make. So, generally I make everything from like drawings to, I've made paintings before. I mean, it's not just like, I just don't do the collections of 9.
Okay.
But when you get to like, what I sort of like promote in a sense, at this point, the base is a collection of 9 found objects that all have, that anchoring feature, whether it's, the same gum wrapper, whatever it is that,
like a cigarette,
usually it's
or...
like, like I said, I mean, it revolves around things that are discarded, littered, dropped, lost, and it's the antithesis of that is that I then come along and recognize it, pick it up, catalog it, try to amass 9 of them. Again, sometimes it's very easy. There's certain objects that I could probably amass 9 of in one day. For instance, like, let's say Newport cigarette boxes. They're very plentiful on the streets of New York. There's a lot of Newport smokers here. With a box of Newports, there's going to be like a couple of different types of Newport boxes that you'll find, 100s. Some are, whatever. So I try to keep everything as consistent as possible. But, there's going to be objects, for instance, like, I'll give you a good example, like butter packaging, okay? There's like 50 different brands of butter that are sold in different supermarkets here in the New York / wherever you are regionally. Obviously, my work centers around New York City and whatever. But, if I find a collapsed butter package or crushed or whatever, a lot of times it's crushed stuff too on the street. I like to have stuff that's kind of like, compacted. And I mentioned, it fitting into my pockets and stuff. But, if I find 9 different brands of butter packages, then it kind of fits into a butter package rather than that specific brand of butter. Land O'Lakes or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
I love to find 9 of the exact same brands of butter packaging, but if it's butter packaging, well, it just takes time. It's like sure. Eventually I will find, and a lot of the time it revolves around kind of like which is just the most purchased butter packaging and the most, and then it gets into like, how people dispose of their trash. A lot of the times the butter packages is a product of recycling bags opening up on the sidewalk or, it getting strewn about. So it's, it's different people's, tidiness, the way that they, there's all different factors of how things end up on the street. But to get back to Eli's question, there's hundreds and hundreds of different categories of objects. So in terms of completed pieces, there's so many.
Yeah, sure.
And, I've never tried to, sit down and, I have everything kind of like in my facility here, but I've never tried to like count how many completed pieces I have because I'm just, I'm not there yet. I'm like, a lot of my time, and I mentioned this earlier, a lot of my time is spent trying to get out of the house and be on the street and skate and, whatever, do what I do. And so, there's certain days, like today, for instance, it's raining again. So, I had the time to kind of sit down and be indoors. I did kind of like empty out my pockets this morning when I whatever, and kind of cataloged some stuff. And then just now I went out for a coffee and a sandwich and, sure enough, I found a package of raisins. I found 2 Tootsie Roll packaging, and I found a business card.
Okay.
And unfortunately, when it rains, it makes the stuff wet, kind of difficult to handle that stuff. And unfortunately, the business card ripped in my pocket. But, it's kind of easy come, easy go. It's like I'll wait for it to dry and maybe even tape it up. But, so it's like revolving door with this stuff, and it's kind of like, there's categories of things that I have stored down in the basement that I've, not necessarily like completely forgotten about, but sometimes things like just morph into their own kind of subgenres, and so it's in terms of like a catalog, the raisonné or something like this, I've never tried to attempt to like, the other thing is that most of the stuff doesn't live as a completed work of art. It lives in a storage You know, and it's only until I, you know, show the work or sell the work. Yeah. So, you know, it's layered, multifaceted.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know, I make all kinds of stuff. So, and a lot of it is like kind of work that's not yet been built. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, you know, is it there? Yes. Is it built? No, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But, yeah. And then you know, getting back to the shows, it's like, I don't show work all that often. You know, I have my Instagram account and whatever. But, you know, I don't have gallery representation or any of that stuff. And, you know, it's not because I don't want it. I just, you know, it is what it is kind of thing. No one's ever come to me and been like, you know, I guess it's similar, like with that stuff. It's similar to like riding for a skateboard brand. No gallery has come to me and said, hey, do you want to, you know, specifically show with us or anything?
Yeah. So, are you working on a show in the near future or not right now?
I mean, I'm working on a show every single day of my life.
Okay.
You know, but no, nothing scheduled.
Okay, not yet.
So,
okay.
Yeah. But I did just show some work. I
saw that. Ago. I think on your Instagram.
Yeah, it's just a little spot by my house. Yeah, it was cool, and I priced everything ridiculously cheap just to see like kind of what would, you know. It's like I don't have a set price. I don't know who wants my work, you know. It's kind of like I don't really keep track of that stuff, you know. So
I'm sure a lot of people, I mean, I would be interested in getting some art from you at some point one day for sure. So sure. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Definitely not. Yeah. So yeah.
You know what they say? Money is green here in the United States. Money is green. It means you want work. And I'm not targeting you. I'm saying if you want work, throw money at me.
Okay.
You know, it's not free.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, you know, it's just a saying. I use it often. Money is green. I don't know what the EU's money looks like these days, and you know what? To be honest, nowadays, money in the United States is plastic or non-existent. Numbers on a screen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah. Anyhow, great questions from Eli. Appreciate it.
All right, let's do this one. Is an audio one.
Hey, Bob. It's Kevin from the Look Back Library. I'm curious what you consider to be your holy grail as far as the best sticker in your collection, or maybe the one that was the most difficult to find. Also curious, who was the person that sent you a random batch of stickers that was unsolicited? Any way out donors? Hope all is well.
Yeah. Kevin knows the answer to this one. And,
yeah, I figured.
Yeah, recently I got a random unsolicited package of stickers from Mike Yusufor. And I'm sure it was probably with Kevin's like poking and prodding, because I know Kevin and Mike talk often. But yeah, I randomly one day I opened up my mail, and I think Kevin had kind of like, you know, gave a little wink that something might be coming in the mail. But I got a package in the mail, and it was a random envelope, and it was from Mike Yusufor. And, you know, this all kind of stemmed from, I don't know if you saw the video I did from the labor skate shop, where Spike Jones... Oh, and by the way, I'll divulge the answer to that video. The guy in the wheelchair was Spike Jones's brother, Sam, I believe his name is. And he dropped off a bunch of stuff. I went over there. I did a video about the stuff that was dropped off. And in it was a bunch of Transworlds. And on the cover of Transworld, in one issue, maybe 89, 90-ish, somewhere around there, Mike Yusufor had a cover. And I misidentified him I think I even might have said that it was Jordan Richter, clearly knowing that Jordan Richter had a cover in probably that same year. And I probably knew deep down in my brain that it wasn't Jordan Richter, but I honestly didn't know who it was. And, you know, I had maybe mentioned this somewhere before, but during the 89 sort of like whatever season, if you will, there was a lot of like Southern California and even East Coast, like vert guys named Mike.
Okay.
There was Mike Prosenko, Mike Conroy,
Mike Frazier, was he already around?
Mike Frazier. I mean, Mike Frazier's pretty distinct in terms of his style, and I'm not saying that these guys all have similar styles, but they were like white guys with black hair and, you know, whatever, wore black helmets. Now, when you get into like regional kind of disparities or whatever, you know, I knew Mike Conroy was a kind of like a Virginia Beach / you know, whatever, Maryland or wherever, because he always had footage skating either Trashmore or what is it? I think it's called like the Allendale ramp. Very similar looking ramp to Trashmore. But anyhow, long story short, I misidentified that cover, and it was Yusufer. And Yusufer, I will also say, always had footage at McGill's. Mm-hmm. And I want to even say that cover might have been at McGill's. But anyhow, yeah, I guess somehow Mike saw it. I made an Instagram post kind of like apologizing for not knowing who it was.
Okay.
Even though, like, you can never know everything.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
And the thing, you know, like I said, I mean, I was also like a teenager back then. And I was saying that a lot of the times you don't really like know exactly what these guys look like because you just see them as like flashes on the screen skating a vert ramp, you know? Mm-hmm. They never like show people's faces. And we also didn't have like social media the way we can study, you know, you can study magazines and you did study magazines, but for some reason that one just kind of like slipped me. So I made this video, I made an Instagram post kind of explaining that what I called a gaffe. And I guess Yusufor saw it and kind of enjoyed watching it and sent me a bunch of stickers. And yeah, it was crazy. So I got a bunch of red Santa Cruz stickers, and I got like 2 of the Jordan Richter Stingray gun stickers that I had already had one. And maybe I was like, you know what? I think maybe like right before that package got sent to me, I had just recently scored that ray gun sticker, which was a blind era sticker. Mm-hmm. And I had spent a lot of time trying to locate it. In fact, I want to say that I bought some stickers off of a seller on eBay at one point, and that sticker might have been in the batch of stickers that I bought off this dude. And it either got lost in the mail or the dude like fully scammed me.
Okay.
But the crazy part was that I had purchased stickers off this dude before, and they showed up at my house fine. But I had bought 2 more batches of stuff off of him, and those never showed up. And I want to say that ray gun sticker was in there in that first batch. It didn't show up, and so then I spent like months and months trying to locate another one. Finally located another one, got it in the mail, and then like 2 days later, Yusufer sent me 2 more of those, you know, ray gun stickers. So then I have 3, which is great. I mean, I love having doubles. I'm yet to really trade any of my doubles. So if anyone is out there that likes stickers and they have doubles and or would like to trade, I have a bunch of stuff that maybe somebody needs for their collection or whatever. So. But yeah, cool. That was so that's Kevin kind of baiting me into the Yusufor, and you know I totally appreciate that. I mean, who doesn't love a batch of free vintage Santa Cruz stickers? You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other question that he asked was, "What is my favorite?"
Yeah.
Now that's a difficult
Your holy
one
grail.
Because there's so many. The one that I mentioned on the 9 Club was that First Go Nodis sticker, which are pretty rare. You don't really see them out in the wild. I have a collection of 9 Rocking Dog Neil Blenders, and every one of those is special. I love the Henry Sanchez 2 blow-up dolls. I have a stereo Paulo Diaz sticker. I mean, there's so many. I have a bunch of blue skateboards. I don't know if you're familiar with blue skateboards.
I don't think so, no.
Blue was basically Dune and Jason Lee before they started stereo.
Oh, okay.
And it was, so I have a Kareem, I have a Dune, and I have 2 Jason Lees and a couple like logo stickers. Those are pretty cool.
Wow.
A Kris Markovich color sticker with Bjork on it. I have a couple of those. I don't remember how I got those. Justin Gerard gave me a little stack of Mike Ko Mad Circle stickers, Barry McGee drawn. I have a Chris Hall Underworld Element sticker, which is the champion logo.
Okay.
I mean, so many rad stickers. I have 3 OG Delmar stickers, one with the original logo before Pusshead drew the sort of like second Delmar Skate Ranch logo. I have a bunch of stuff. It's like, you know, I have this McRad sticker that's like homemade, which is rad. I have a Faction homemade sticker. Just random ass shit. I have a Klaus Grabke. I don't know if you remember. I don't know how old you are, but Klaus Grabke did this zine called The Death Zone.
I'm familiar with the name, but I don't think I know what you're referencing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a Death Zone zine in physical form in my life.
Okay.
But I remember always people having those stickers on their boards when I would flip through the mags when I was a kid. And so, which reminds me of Tony Hawk always having 10-foot boneless stickers on his boards, which I believe, I don't know if that was a zine per se, but I know O was behind those stickers, the 10-foot boneless stickers. But again, just context, just stuff that I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Another great example is Tony always wearing the pipeline stickers on his helmet. I wanted to have a pipeline sticker. I'm sorry, not pipeline, Carlsbad Pipelines.
Okay.
Which was a skate shop in Carlsbad, as opposed to the Pipeline skate park, which I have some of those too. So there's tons and tons. To be honest, every sticker I own that I've gone out of my way to kind of like source is a holy grail.
Oh yeah. I'm sure, yeah. Are you still like looking out for stickers like on regularly, or is it something
every single day of my life? Every single day. The last sticker I bought, I just bought a graffiti sticker online like 2 days ago.
Okay.
But I also collect graffiti writers' stickers as well. Mostly New York stuff. Graffiti culture in New York is similar to skateboard culture. They have interesting parallels where there's like these characters, if you will, these people that leave behind a physical marker, a mark. And with graffiti, it's more difficult because graffiti writers don't necessarily, they produce something that is meant to live on a wall that you can't physically take down. Whereas like I said earlier, you go into the skate shop and you can purchase the physical object that is the representation of that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's more of like a commodity-based sort of whatever art form or market or industry. So graffiti, you're kind of reduced to like signs that might have a person's tag on it that you can pry off the wall, which is kind of frowned upon in graffiti culture. But at the same time, there's an element of like the idea that if you're able to pry that metal sign off the wall with the whoever's tag on it, now that metal object will live potentially much longer in your possession
than it will on the street.
Because now you can preserve it, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, graffiti stickers, I love like hand-drawn graffiti stickers. The skateboard sticker that I probably got last, I can't even remember what that might have been. Yeah, I don't know. So, but every day I look at,
You're on the lookout, yeah.
Yeah, because there's always stuff that I want. For instance, I love completing guys' careers in terms of like a sticker collection, which means like having every sticker that they've ever put out. And right now I have like 3 Jeff Kendall stickers that I don't have, and maybe like 3 Eric Dressen stickers that I don't have in terms of like Santa Cruz based stuff.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I'm always like kind of like looking out for like, especially stuff at a good price. Because everything's basically out there. And what did I say? Money is green.
Yeah.
You could kind of like buy anything you want if you're willing to spend enough money on it.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, great questions. Love what Kevin does, by the way, too.
Yeah, he's rad. I need to do an interview with him at some point as well. I'd love to. We've been talking about it for a long time, but I need to get him on.
Yeah.
Let's see, this one is from, so I'm going to butcher his name, I'm sorry, Jack Palmiotti? Is that how you say it?
Palmiotti, yeah.
Palmiotti.
Jack.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he said, do you think there should still be the debate over who's a New York skater and who's New Jersey skater in skateboarding? Or should it just come down to the tricks? You care and put a good amount of input into how your parts look and feel, with the order of which tricks are shown, as with your static part. Should pros more often have a say in the edit of their own video parts?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on, certain people are willing to relinquish control. Me personally, that happened in my past. I never really fretted about it. I guess there's been instances where it was a big deal. But, at the end of the day, it is what it is kind of thing. So yes, the answer to that question is yes. I feel like, or I guess I can only use myself personally, and that would be a hard yes. Unless I completely trusted somebody. Usually what happens is I will say, throw it together, let's see what works. Because I'm not, at the end of the day, I don't know how to edit a video myself. With certain, I could use my phone and video shop to like kind of edit like stuff on my phone. And when it comes down to that, yes, I have, edited videos on my phone. Going back to other video parts, it's usually been me working with somebody else, and they'll throw stuff together. I'll say like, I like this there, I like that there. Maybe they'll say this works better here. I like this song. This person says like, oh, maybe this song works better, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, it's a process.
It's a collaboration kind of.
Yeah. So, but should the skateboarder have a say in that? Absolutely. I mean, it's their skateboarding,
Yeah.
In terms of his first question, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're from New Jersey, you're from New Jersey, it's like, so, and that's always been more of a thing when you get down into like localism, which has always been a thing in skateboarding. In fact, JFA had a record called Blatant Localism, which is, it's what it comes down to. It's like your crew, the crew, skateboard culture has always had that element to it. We're just getting, I don't want to say watered down, but it's like, nowadays people have, I guess they have more distractions. No one really cares about this, that, and the other thing as the way they did back then. So is that a good thing? Sure. And I guess I don't mean to talk about that negatively, but I guess, especially with like, when people have maybe heard me talk about localism in the past, I guess maybe they get a bad taste in their mouth. But it's just your scene, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way it is,
Yeah.
Or the way it was. I don't know. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like you can never, in my opinion, be from somewhere else and claim X, Y, or Z. You might skate there, but it's like that's not where you're from. You're from where you're from.
All right. Let's see.
From the outside, as I understand it, a lot of your creative output is about searching for patterns, recognizing a system of different typologies, and putting that system into a clearly defined and beautifully articulated order that someone like me, who from the outside may not see the world in the way that you do, can still grasp, and not only grasp, but totally actually understand and appreciate how you see the world. And I think that manifests in a couple ways, most palpably for me, in spot choice, where you decide to skate, what you decide to skate, and what trick you choose to do on said obstacle. I started to notice that from your static part, and I've started to appreciate that in all of the kind of footage you've ever put out, including the stuff you put out on Instagram today, but also in your art practice, where you search for things that most people kind of pass over, and you organize them often in a well-ordered grid, thoughtfully composed. And then you just sort of show that there is this kind of system that determines the form through abrasion and entropy, but also just through selection on your end. That says something about our world. So I guess that's a fucking Jesus Christ. Sorry, man. Maybe just keep it simple by asking you, when did trick choice and spot choice start to coalesce for you? Has it always been that way, or was this a growing awareness? Thank you. Huge fan. Jesus Christ. Bobby fucking Puleo.
Wow. Was that Ted Barrow?
Yes.
Was it Ted Barrow?
It was, yes.
That's so funny. Yeah, so wow.
That was a long question.
Yeah. I took a little nap. So, yeah, that's interesting. And I guess what he's saying, is true. I don't know if there was ever a conscious, like, sort of like beginning to the whole thing, but I suppose every skateboarder, makes a conscious decision as to like what trick they're gonna try or do on a particular spot. So I don't know if necessarily I'm that unique in that sense, because you roll up to a spot. Now, I guess what he's saying is that I search out the spot. Maybe, you know, I have no like real control over what it is that I will find, because that's what the architects or whoever had built, you know, the object that I'm going to skate. I mean, it's not like I wake up in the morning and say, I want to find a brick pyramid. And then I go out and look for the brick pyramid. Like, that's not how it works. I mean, we all understand that. So I guess in a sense, you know, you just try and make like the best decision based on what you have available to you, you know? And I apologize if that's not the answer that, you know, maybe Ted is looking for, but at the same time, it's like you try to say to yourself, I mean, it's like an artist, you know, they say, what will satisfy me? What do I want to end up on this blank space or this canvas or whatever it is medium you're working with? And you try to execute that, and hopefully you like it, and hopefully other people like it, you know? But, you know, and of course, like when you get down to like the final product, which in many respects he's talking about video, you know, you hopefully are going to like kind of concoct or sculpt or curate, you know, something that has an impact on others, right? And it's something that you can kind of stand behind and be like, I'm proud of this. You know, you also want to, in skateboarding, it's kind of like a sport or a challenge to do tricks that no one's seen before. You know, I had mentioned to find spots that no one's seen before. So it's like, you know, it's not rocket science per se. It's just, I guess I just kind of like chose a certain type of object, a certain kind of maybe like aesthetic, you know, being in and around New York from an early kind of age or whatever kind of contributed to that. I mean, so if you film something in New York, it's going to distinctly look like New York, you know? It's based around the type of architecture here in New York, New Jersey, you know? Obviously, like something in New York is not going to look like Paris. It's not going to look like San Diego. So, you know, it's factors that are somewhat out of my control. But at the same time, you know, there are elements that are in my control, and I kind of just tried to work with what I had, you know? But I'm assuming every skateboarder kind of makes the same types of conscious decisions, you know? And there's also some people that are like, I want my footage to look like I'm in New York, so I'm going to go film a video part in New York, you know? So, whatever.
This one is from Mathew McGrath.
Oh, yeah, Matt McGrath, yeah. Do you know who he is?
Yeah, I understand. He filmed the Math Circle videos, right?
Correct. Well, he filmed the second one. He filmed the majority of 5 Flavors.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. He said, you have always sought out obscure, hidden, and unusual spots to skate. Barker Barrett was the first person I saw approach skating the way you approach it. Do you think skateboarders develop an instinct or supernatural understanding of environments and are able to decode ordinary urban planning and unlock its hidden potential? Do you think this sort of innate curiosity is what drew you into hidden history and conspiracy research? I tend to think so for myself. I don't see the world at face value. I see layers of depth everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, great question. You know, one can only kind of surmise that as skateboarders, we inherently sort of, or naturally, or, you know, unnaturally see the world differently than others do, just by the nature of what it is that we do. So, I mean, I think there's a distinct correlation. You know, I also kind of like went through the 9/11 event, which changed my whole perception on how the way the world works. And it took me years to kind of figure out make sense of what was going on around me, whether it's true or not. You know, this is kind of like what made the most sense to me. So, yeah, but, you know, I guess first and foremost, to get compared to Barker is a huge compliment. You know, Barker, I will admit, I never experienced getting to skate with Barker when he was ever in New York, per se. Barker rode for Szot. Barker, I'm sure, spent plenty of time in New York skating with these guys, the guys at Szot. But, yeah, you know, Matt essentially got pitched into San Francisco's scene. You know, it's crazy, too, because Matt lived in New York before he then ended up in SF. And he ended up living with Barker for a long time. So he got to kind of like witness Barker's kind of like creative genius firsthand. I will also admit I never really got to skate with Barker that much in SF, so I can't, say like I know exactly what he's talking about. I've seen Barker skate and his video footage, but in terms of like processes, that's something Matt was intimately there for, something I was not. So I can't really compare the two, approaches or whatever.
Yeah.
But, if Matt sees it, Matt's spent plenty of time with the both of us. So, like I said in the last question, everyone has their own individual process, so I guess to like see a similarity is interesting. Yeah, it is kind of what it is. But yeah, I mean, Matt's art is incredible. Matt's an incredible dude, super interesting guy. But yeah, so I appreciate the question. Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, let's see. This one is from Jay Maldonado. So let's see. He said, how do you feel about how social media plays a role in today's skating?
I mean, shit. It's just basically...
You have 3 hours.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like, endless, sort of like topic of discussion. But, somebody could have easily posed the question going back to when videos started to come out. How do you see videos playing a role in today's, or yesterday's progression of consumption of skateboard culture?
Yeah.
It just goes on and on and on and on. It's just the delivery system.
Yeah. Sure.
So, but obviously one sort of like repercussion, and I mentioned this earlier, is that, to a certain extent, we used to have 5 magazines at one time, 6 magazines or whatever.
Yeah.
Now there's only 1 magazine.
Yeah.
And everything else is consumed via social media. So, that's an obvious sort of like repercussion or effect of social media on skateboarding is the elimination of print magazines. Now, somebody like Kevin Marks will be like, well, there's plenty of magazines out there still.
Yeah, but not with the same,
yeah, exactly.
How do you say that? The amount of copies they produce and everything. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And importance to a certain extent.
Yeah, sure.
One can make the case that one person's Instagram account is far more important than that zine, that, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
So there's that. And then, accessibility. Obviously, back when magazines kind of ruled the lay of the land, and magazines were the sort of like social media, you had 1 month, and Transworld and Thrasher would come out, and you got that month to scan the magazine. You're looking at this. So imagine that. Imagine looking at the same Instagram post for 1 month.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the equivalent. You get one Instagram post, and that's it.
That would be interesting.
Now, granted, the Instagram post maybe can hold, 65 photographs, but at the same time, you're looking at those same 65 photographs for 1 month until the next one comes out.
Yeah.
And sometimes the next one never came out, like with Thrasher or Transworld doing like a bi-monthly issue. Now you're getting 2 months to look at that same issue, whatever.
It made it more precious too. I remember I started skating in 2000 and I enjoyed, there was no YouTube, no social media at that time, and the internet was starting, and I consumed, VHS videos and magazines, and I'm really grateful that I got to experience that, because it was a very precious way to just enjoy skateboarding at that time. And it's pretty crazy to just reflect on that now and see how much content is out there and how not precious it is, kind of like there's just so much of it that it's nothing really makes a mark anymore, or not as much as it did at least. But
well, this goes back to what I was saying about how important it is, in terms of what Kevin is doing. He's preserving those things that have essentially been set in stone. I'm not saying that social media and or whatever, the internet doesn't preserve those things, but, let's just say hypothetically you posted footage on your Instagram account and you disable your Instagram account, that footage is potentially gone forever. Granted, I know we have certain things, like the way back, whatever machine or whatever that, I know that there's social media sort of trollers or internet trollers or whatever you want to call them that can fetch different things from kind of like a bygone or whatever, potentially erased moment. But again, that's like sort of what it is, So yeah, it's interesting.
All right. This one is from Rich Adler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's see. He said, I heard that Bobby has been surfing in recent years, and I would like to ask where he has been surfing. Also, has he encountered any locals-only type territorialism at surfing spots? And if so, how it affects his approach? And also, what is his go-to brand for white t-shirts?
Okay, so I have not been surfing. I don't know where Rich heard that. I've tried surfing 3 times in my life. I tried snowboarding twice, maybe even once. I can't remember. I surfed once. I think the first time I ever surfed was with Huff out in Ocean Beach in SF.
Yeah.
Which that experience alone would make me never want to try surfing ever again because it was super rough. It was super cold.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't even think I made it out past the break. It like just brutalized me.
Okay.
I didn't catch a wave. I didn't even get a chance. I just like spent the time like battling, trying to get out past the break. Very unpleasant experience, but I was with Huff and it was, that's...
Was he a good surfer?
I can't even remember if Dude, to be honest, I was trying not to die.
Yeah.
To be honest. Seriously, I was trying not to die.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know what the hell he was doing. I forget who we were even with. I don't know if there was anybody else even with us. But, man, I feel like Don Carey was with us, if that makes any sense. You probably don't know who Don Carey is.
I don't think so, no.
He was a dude from, like, upstate New York, and he rode for Think for a little while.
Okay.
Whether or not Don was with us, I can't remember exactly. Oh, maybe 2 of the Hawaiians were with us. I don't know. We hung out with this, like, kind of motley crew of dudes.
Okay.
But anyhow, the second time I ever tried surfing was with, I want to say, Rick and Buddy, and this dude, Juan, who, so Juan had a spot out in Rockaway, and it was a very similar situation. It was early in the season, it was super cold, and it was super brutal, and that also was a terrible experience. Again, I was with those dudes, so it was kind of interesting. Don't think I made it past the break. Definitely didn't catch a wave. It's one of the most incredibly difficult things to do if you have not kind of like figured it out.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've never tried it, but yeah.
The third time I went surfing, I hopped freight trains with this dude. This guy Beaver, he's actually from Jersey, outside of Philly. He moved to SF. I met him when I was in SF. We hitchhiked down to Santa Cruz. Different time than riding freight trains, but he and I hitchhiked down to Santa Cruz. Crazy ass story there. I'll tell it at some other time. But we went surfing at this spot called Cowles.
Okay.
Which is just kind of like maybe somewhere in and around Steamer's Lane, which is a famous surf spot in Santa Cruz. We had foam longboards, and I caught waves there and rode them like there was no tomorrow. It was like one of the most beautiful experiences. That would make me try surfing again, but, it's like snowboarding. It's like, dude, you got to get out to the beach. It's not like skateboarding. You know, skateboarding, you just get outside your house.
Just hop on
your
board
skateboard down and you go.
Skate anywhere.
Yeah. But this spot, Cowles, was like so easy to ride. There was like no one else out there with us. In terms of localism, I mean, that's where sort of like skateboarding and surfing really intertwine with, surf spots are almost as more important to the surfer than a skate spot, because skate spots, there's infinite possibilities in terms of what you could skate.
Yeah.
A surf spot,
more
you
limited.
Gotta have a break. You got to have an ocean. You got to have blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So if it's too crowded, it's too crowded. So this is, and this is like the real kind of like where like localism kind of formed, which is like kind of like, dude, it is what it is thing. But so I've never experienced any kind of like any of those problems because I've only surfed 3 times. White tees, it would be Hanes 50/50s or pretty much Hanes 50/50s are my go-to.
Okay.
Size medium 50/50 cotton, and hopefully under like, I don't know, $12 for a 3-pack.
Okay.
So, that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, this one is from Reese Forbes. So he said, do you get enjoyment out of the accessibility of skate footage these days? What is your favorite platform to view new videos? How do you keep track of who is who? And if you had a time machine and you could transport OG Bobby into this year, what team would you be trying to get on?
Man, he's asking way too many things that I mean, sheesh. I don't barely pay attention to new skate footage. Of course, I see all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I saw footage today. I saw a clip of a dude. I clicked on his Instagram account. I was, like, in a sense, blown away at how good people are.
Yeah.
You know, clips that you would take you months to do are just, you know, compiled. Clips that are, like, would change skateboarding in a sense, you know, 15, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, are now just, like...
Just a random Instagram
posts
clip, yeah.
on Instagram, you know?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I view skateboarding pretty much only on Instagram. I don't use Facebook. I don't use TikTok. I don't use any Twitter, none of that shit. YouTube, you know, is the other kind of, like, grandfathered platform, obviously.
Do you ever watch any full lengths that come out, or not really?
Never.
No? Okay.
Never. I'm just not interested in it. It's like an old school rap fan, hip hop fan, you know, listening
to current hip hop,
grew up on EPMD and now has to listen to, you know, whoever,
Kendrick or
whoever. The Kendrick thing is interesting. I'm not going to say I'm not a fan. Well, I'm definitely not a fan. What am I talking about? But it's interesting, you know, contextually.
Sure.
I always end up just scratching my head, kind of like, oh, all right. Oh, I'll tell you one recent one that I was kind of interested in was Doechii.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Which is crazy, but it's just her flow was kind of more of an older kind of style.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you know, but skateboarding is not rap, obviously. Kids do some wild tricks, you know, blah, blah, blah. But if I could transport OG Bobby and end up on a team today, I don't even know what the hell is out there.
Yeah.
I don't know. And there's nothing that compares to in my mind, what was you know, 94, 95 stereo.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's different time.
93 to 90, you know, 99 Girl Chocolate. It's night and day. It's night and day. I see a lot of guys now and I'm like, oh, that dude should ride for Girl. You know? I mean, even to this day, I still think guys should still be on Girl.
Yeah.
You know? I'm like, which is a funny sentence if you think about it. Guys.
Yeah.
Girl. Guy, girl. But, you know.
Who does he ride for again? Is it April or?
April.
Right,
what the fuck is April? Just go back.
Is it a Shane O'Neill's company, I believe, or something?
I don't know. But Shane O'Neill should be on Girl, too. Just shut the damn thing down and, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to start their own thing, so, yeah.
I understand that. And I'm not, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, of course.
Not really kidding. But, so anyhow. Yeah, so, you know, I mean, OG Girl is still the best kind of thing in my brain. You know, Old World, Menace. I like all the old brands.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That's like EPMD. Like what? You don't, that's, you know, nice and smooth.
Would you have gone to Girl if was that ever something that was?
No, I would have in a heartbeat, but I would have been frightened out of my mind because I was not on that level. You know, maybe in retrospect, people could see some kind of you know, it would have made sense, but at the time, it made no sense. You know,
okay.
Those guys were just on a much more advanced level than I was in terms of skateboard. My style of skating for back then wasn't what Girl was about. Girl was about technical prowess and you know, my stuff was more terrain based, you know.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, I think a lot of people, especially because I had that photo with that guy board, you know, maybe they see some kind of correlation, oh, it could have worked, you know, but in the time it was not. There's no way. And plus I would have been, like I said, I would have been afraid because, you know, shit, dude, it was I think Mark Johnson told me when he proposed me to get on Enjoy, I think him and Jerry said oh, we want to put this guy Bobby on, and they presented it to Rodney, and he was like, who the hell is this guy, and why do you want to put him on? You know, Rodney,
really?
I heard Rodney couldn't see you know, the significance in what I was doing, and I understand that because Rodney's is the most technical skateboarder ever.
Yeah.
You know, he's responsible for plenty of the tricks that we do
a lot
today.
of
So
most of them for sure.
yeah, so it's only like kind of like after the fact is like something like that makes sense. But I would have been frightened if I got the sort of like the nod from something like that, but it was not happening. I couldn't even get on Habitat. Those guys were kind of like, hell no. But, that didn't really deter me from what it was that I was doing. And I guess in a sense, like, in retrospect, I guess that's the...
What about... Sorry, I'm kind of going all over the place, but what about Alien? You just mentioned Habitat, but was Alien ever something that could have happened?
No, I was never... Again, same thing. I mean, much in the same respects as I wasn't a Habitat guy, I was definitely not an Alien guy. That was like their own little clique. I mean, that's like a special brand of dude,
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. For some reason, I feel like you could have fit on there. Like, I could see it.
In retrospect, but contextually at the time, it wasn't going to work.
It wasn't going to work.
I understood that. Mm-hmm. I understood that. So I'm very lucky to have ridden for anybody. To be honest, like.
No, and you rode for some iconic brands. I mean,
sure.
Mad Circle.
I mean, I still maintain that I never really fit on Enjoy, but at the time, it was kind of like, all right, whatever, And in retrospect, it kind of worked, I mean, like I said, I think I said it earlier. Like when I rode for Stereo, like I loved being on that team. Like I was very proud of that.
Yeah.
And then Mad Circle, it was like obviously the Mad Circle that the time period that I was on Mad Circle wasn't the same time period as Let the Horns Blow, but that period of Mad Circle made that second half of Mad Circle what Mad Circle was,
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's important to pay attention to like who you put on a team and how they fit on a team, and the type of person, the type of skateboarder that you want to kind of like forge your brand with.
Yeah.
It's super important.
Mm-hmm.
It's super important. And I always maintain like there's certain people that ended up on certain brands that made no sense to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Brian Anderson on Girl, it never made sense to me. Anthony Pappalardo on Chocolate never made sense to me. He's an Alien guy, like tried and true.
Yeah.
Jerry Sue on Chocolate, like what?
Yeah.
And in many respects, it's funny because when you take Jerry and Mark on Chocolate at that one like quick little time period, it's almost like they took the core of Enjoy and just it's like what's the point?
No, for sure, I agree.
Yeah. But anyhow, blah, blah, blah. Those are just my opinions.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I don't even remember what the question was.
Reese transport. Yeah, Reese Forbes. He said transport OG Bobby, right. And what team would you like to fit on?
So to answer the question, who the hell knows?
Yeah. Okay.
Good to hear from you, Reese. Though I love that.
He asked a follow up. He said, "If you could be a dog, what kind of dog would you be?" Sorry.
I'm already a dog. What is he talking about? I don't know. I have no idea. All dogs are great.
Okay, this one is from Kelly Bird.
Oh, nice.
He said, as someone that has always been at the forefront of the school of thought that how you interpret your environment on a skateboard is just as, if not more important than trick progression, who would you say best represents that ethos in the current era?
Current era? I mean, shit, that's a tough one. Because I like I said, I mean, I
don't really pay attention much to...
I don't really pay attention, but I will say, and this is going to sound crazy, but out of the more recent stuff I've watched, I watched some of that Shane O'Neill raw footage on Thrasher like a few weeks back, and I was just blown away by that guy's technical ability.
Okay.
I also watched 2024 footage from Nyjah, which was insane.
Wow. Okay.
In terms of like street stuff, I mean, I'm always blown away by all of like the vert/bowl guys.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I mean, shit. And I know this isn't essentially what Kelly's talking about, but you cannot not look at Jimmy McDonald.
The vert skater, Jimmy Wilkins? Or?
Jimmy Wilkins. Yeah. You cannot.
Yeah, super graceful.
What he's. Yeah, it's totally insane.
Unreal.
Oh, there's this dude that I love, Rifio.
Okay, I'm not.
I don't know if you know who he is, but super interesting tricks. He does like no-handed 360 varials on vert, like above the coping. He does all kinds of crazy shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, again, this is not what Kelly's talking about, but I will always be a fan of Guy Mariano's stuff.
Yeah.
Anything he puts out, even if it's like some weird pole jam shit, I still love it. And I love the fact that he's one of the few people that carries on the lineage from a bygone era, so to speak. He goes all the way back to the Powell days, essentially. And he's still like producing stuff that you're like, damn, that was dope.
Every clip he puts out is just incredible.
It's really well thought out, and he really seems to kind of like map out his attack, and you're just like, whoa, I did not see that one coming.
Yeah.
So he'll always be like one of my like
heroes, or
just influences, favorites, and it's, I always wear them on my sleeve. My favorites are Julian, Henry, Mike York, Mark, obviously, Guy, alongside everybody else, not as dressing.
For sure. There's one skater that I feel like a lot of people have been saying that he reminds people of you, like a newer version of you, kind of, is Dick Rizzo.
I mean,
have you checked out some of his footage? And
I think I've watched. I think I watched a couple, maybe a video part here and there. There's definitely I sent him a message one day, and I was like, oh, you found that one spot. Like, I found that spot, tried to skate it. It was too fucked up.
Okay.
And the passage of time, sometimes it's like. The other thing, too, is like back when I was kind of skating, I've had cars, and I've definitely modified spots, but there were certain spots that I just never got around to where I like could fix an entire sidewalk patch, or whatever it was. Dudes nowadays, that's not even a second thought. They're just on it, modifying whatever needs to get modified, or, whatever. But in one particular instance, there was like this one spot out there in like, I don't know if it was like Gravesend or Midwood, but it was just like this kind of like little bump over a fence into a door, and it was just too fucked up. And I guess over the passage of time, the sidewalk got fixed and you could approach it, and I was just like, damn, it's so rad that you got to skate that, because I found that like 15 years ago and it was unskateable. But I guess that's a great kind of like, going back to Reese's question, if I could take old Bobby and go back in time, or I'm sorry, come to the future and skate some of the stuff that I see these days. I guess I could. I just I'm not really motivated to go out and do that stuff, because it's like, in many respects, that takes, it's not that I don't have the time to do it, but it's just like, I know if I go to that parking lot where I skate at, I'm definitely going to get my session in. Instead of driving all the way across Brooklyn to go like look at this one spot that now I got to come back with a bag of cement and blah blah blah. So it's just like, I don't know, I'm just not, You
don't want to put that much time and effort into it. Yeah.
But listen, if anybody wants to pay me to go and do that shit, money's green.
Okay, let's see. This one is from Florian Schneider. This is the guy who did the Pushed documentary. Do you remember?
Of course.
Yeah.
That dude showed up on my doorstep, him and his buddy.
Really?
They showed up on my doorstep. They were kind of like, oh, we're going to come to the United States to make a documentary about you, or whatever. And I was like, yeah, sure you are.
Yeah.
And then next thing I know, these two dudes are like at my doorstep. I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Sick. So he said, I would like to know if he would now, almost 15 years after I asked him for the first time, sell his art. I mean the real pieces, not the copies he did while we were shooting Pushed. He wouldn't like to go out and sell them and make money with it at all. So would he sell his collection?
Well, like I said, I mean, I guess we're getting back to like what Nicola asked. It depends which one. You know, some are for sale, some are not yet completed. So the ones that are not yet completed, no, they're, yeah, yes, and I guess that's a dual answer of yes and no. Some are for sale, some are not.
Okay.
Like I said, I mean, if I'm shooting for, well, let's just put it this way. Let's say I have 9 of an object, then I have 9 more, I have 18 now. Do I sell one and separate it from the other one? I guess not. I guess in order for me to sell it, you'd have to buy the 2 of them, just so that's it's a completed sort of. And I'm not going to sell them for $100. It's like these things have taken me years and years to, So it comes down to like, well, what are you offering me for them?
Yeah.
I had this one dude kind of hit me up and was like, oh, I'm interested in this. And I was like, okay. Something that had taken me, man, I'm not trying to throw this dude under the bus if he hears this, but might have even been the Toyota logos one.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, I was like, yeah, all right, cool. That took me 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Now, does he give a shit how long it took me? No, he doesn't give a shit. I don't, whatever. I understand. But it's like, he's like, oh, I'd love to buy that from you. And it's like, all right, well, what do you want to pay for it? And then you don't get an answer. And it's like, I don't feel comfortable saying, like, I want 10 grand for it.
Yeah.
Because obviously this dude probably is not trying to spend 10 grand on my shit, like, so, it's a fine line. Like, I often refer to this quote, but this guy Chris Rice once told me, he's destroyed wood on Instagram. He's prolific skateboard collector.
Okay.
Has like probably the best Gons collection in terms of like personal riders. He's got Nodis personal riders. He's got all kinds of crazy shit.
Mm-hmm.
And one time he said to me, he's like, oh yeah, this dude like wanted to buy a board or a couple boards from me, and he made me an offer, and he's like, I laughed in it. I'm paraphrasing here, and maybe he didn't laugh in the dude's face, but he just said like, you're offering me not enough money for what this is worth. And he said, my skateboards are way cooler than your money. And I was like, yeah, dude, because at the end of the day, it's like money is like it's like this, you just spend it or you hoard it. It's like, granted, we all need money and shit.
Yeah, of course.
And don't get me wrong, I love money. Like, I'm not trying to like deny myself of money.
Yeah, it's not you're not collecting money. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like going back to what Florian asked, it's like, the thing's not done. So it's like putting out a video part that's incomplete,
Yeah.
You can never like fathom doing something like that. Some people do it. I have a friend who is like an ephemera dealer, and he'll sell the damn shirt off of his back, like he does not see value in objects. And I guess in a sense, like, I guess that is like, I am stricken with that sort of like, I don't know, whatever problem where it's like, I don't want to call myself a hoarder because I'm not necessarily a hoarder. I tend to like hang on to objects that I find valuable.
Yeah.
Because I think they are cooler than money.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if somebody offered me like good money for X, Y, or Z, like, sure, take the damn thing. Especially if it would enable me to kind of like concentrate more intently on what it is that I do,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that, but it's like something that took me 7 or 8 years for $500. It's just not worth it,
Yeah, no,
I could make
sure.
$500 doing some other shit in 2 days if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And then that shit's gone forever, And it's like, if you're not dealing with like reputable collectors or whatever it is, like, I know dudes, I mean myself, like I've lost shit that was like, now granted, if I understood what I know now as like a 14-year-old kid, I would have saved all my original Gons boards that I rode when I was a kid, and all my original Gons shirts that I owned when I was a kid, and all my shit.
Yeah.
But I was just talking to my brother, and I went to Mark's show at Alleged in 1994 or 95, and I bought one of the show posters. And a few years back, I was with my brother down in my mom's basement, and I was like, man, where's that Gons show poster from Alleged? And I was telling him, I was like, I think I saw one online, and it was $5,000. Now, granted, if I had that Gons show poster, I would never sell it per se, especially not for $5,000. Now, $25,000, maybe, But now we're getting into like the kind of like, the sickly. But anyhow, I don't know what the fuck I did with the Gons poster. And my brother was like, oh, it's in one of these poster tubes downstairs. So we go down there, we're looking for it. I found like the Phil Frost one. I found the Thomas Campbell one. But the Gons one was just not in there. We have no idea where it went.
Oh, shit.
And it's like, it bothers the fucking hell out of me to think that I lost that,
Yeah.
So
bummer.
my point is that, you could sell a piece of art that's very important to you to somebody, and maybe they lose it, Now, granted, if you spend enough money on something, you probably don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
But people lose shit all the time. And I'm not saying I don't, but I tend to take pretty good care of the stuff that I care about.
Yeah.
At least I hope I do, you know. It's not to say that, you know, the business card that I found on the ground, the shit ripped in my pocket. Now, is that worth $5,000 now?
Yeah, not yet.
But anyhow, not yet. Yeah, hopefully, right? I think it was for a tattoo parlor called Inked.
Okay.
In New York somewhere. I just saw it and I was like, I also have a tendency to pick up pretty much any business card. I love business cards. I just like, you know, like small, compact, little square or rectangular objects. Mm-hmm. And I think anything with information on it is super interesting. And now, you know, I have a pretty good collection of like New York City-based business cards, you know. Some of them are more interesting than others, you know.
Have you ever made a series of 9 business cards? I'm wondering how would you curate that? Like, how would you select them?
I have plenty that I have 9 of that I found over the course of, you know, days, weeks, especially in my neighborhood. There's people that go out and put business cards on car windshields.
Right, yeah.
And most of the times the owners of those cars go to their car to get in the morning, take the business card, throw it in the street.
Yeah.
You know, so I could walk down a block the morning after somebody has done that. And so, but on my Instagram account, my Gutter Gallery account, no, I have not. Okay. I think at one point I showed some locksmith cards that were not all the same, but they were just basically locksmith business cards. But I think I removed it because they were not all the same locksmith cards, and it just bothered me, and I just took it down after a little while.
Okay.
But no, I've never really showcased any of my business card collection on my Instagram account.
Okay.
You know, and that's just a whole nother like facet of like, I got people that are like interested in my work, but they don't even know like the half. They just know like the stuff that I post. You know, it's like, I've never even posted like 81 of an object on my account because I'm still just like focused on like the 9s, you know?
Yeah.
And I just still think that that's kind of interesting. I also only have like 6,000 followers on that account, and it's just like, you know, it's not like I'm, you know, have any pressure on me to like perform for a certain gallery or whatever the hell, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, sure.
Which is great, so I can kind of do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
So I tend to take things very slowly, and I like to kind of like, you know, that kind of reflected with like my skate footage too. Like, I tend to leak stuff out very slowly because my kind of mantra is like less is more.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it's like when people like bleed footage after like the 17th front crook to front feeble down like a ridiculous handrail. I don't want to say it's not impressive, but it becomes less and less impressive.
Yeah.
As you see more and more of it, it's kind of like, you know, and then you get known for a certain thing, and then it's like, that's why I think Guy is so interesting, because he like switches it up so often.
Yeah,
you know?
He comes up with new exciting maneuvers or spots or something. Yeah.
Totally.
Absolutely.
And that was not a dig at Jamie Foy. He's obviously that dude is super talented.
Oh, yeah.
I just couldn't think of a trick that, you know, like that people get known for. But man, the shit that he does, like front crook to front feeble, that's insane. I mean, that's like, those two tricks shouldn't even go together.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
It seems, Or he did like, I think in this New Balance video recently, he did a front blunt on a double kink handrail.
Yeah.
Like, just, I don't know how you can hold
just sit
on a front.
it. Yeah.
This is ridiculous. Like, I don't know. He's out of this world.
Yeah, totally.
All right. This one is from Aaron Szot. I'm not sure how to say his name.
Yeah. Wow, you went deep on that one. not a lot of people. Yeah, Aaron and I spent a lot of time like kind of pre 9/11 and then post 9/11, like sleuthing around the city. He and I used to skate a lot together, and post 9/11 kind of pitched us out of downtown Manhattan because it was so fucked up from, you know, that event. That it kind of pitched us into different parts of the city that I probably would not have started skating unless 9/11 happened, you know? But 9/11 like rendered like almost all of like lower Manhattan like unskateable to a certain extent.
Yeah, so. For sure. So his question is actually about New York City. He said, has New York become a harder place to get buy-in over the years? And if so, have you ever considered moving?
I consider moving every single day.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, right now it's 35 degrees and rain.
Yeah.
You know?
We're recording this in February.
Yeah. especially in the winter, it's like,
brutal.
Why do I live in New York when I could be in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
You know, I often say this about Los Angeles, is sometimes, though, when you get there, you realize that you are essentially just replacing cold weather with being in a car.
Yeah.
You know? And granted, that's, you know, not necessarily the total truth, but a lot of the times that's what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Just moving around. Granted, you could stay in one little neighborhood, but in order to get to any other place, it's kind of like you got to deal with LA's sort of like nightmare traffic scenarios.
Right.
I love Philadelphia. I've always loved Philadelphia.
Have you ever lived there?
No, I've never lived there. I stayed there for plenty of time, whether it was at Rich Adler's house, Rick's. I've stayed at Rick's house. I've stayed at Frankie's house. It's a great, incredible city, and I love it. And I often wish I moved there, but New York is also New York.
Yeah.
You know? So, not to say that I don't love it here. I'm also super close to my mom in Jersey, which is like 10 miles outside of the city. So it's like, you know, Philly would present a little bit more of like a, you know, going back home, slightly longer commuting time. But yeah, you know, shit, man. Even like my brother lives down in West Palm Beach, and it's like same thing. Like, yeah, so maybe you don't do LA, but you go down to Florida and it's like sit there for 3 months while it's cold here.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just something I haven't gotten around to yet.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in the future.
Yeah, whatever. I love London too. Like, London's super interesting to me. But anyhow, to get back to his first question in terms of getting by, now it's just the same. You know, it's pretty much the same. It's like whether it's inflation or whatever, you just kind of deal with it.
Yeah.
You know, I believe the term is hustling.
He also asked, if you had to go back in time and choose a path that had nothing to do with skateboarding, what would you choose?
I don't know. That's a difficult question. I can't even imagine. Like, I don't see myself as like another person.
Yeah.
So,
were you interested in anything before you started skating?
Yeah, I was interested in I was interested in all kinds of shit. Like, you know, I liked BMX riding. I liked freaking Star Wars figures. I liked hockey. I liked baseball. But yeah, I never skateboarding shaped me from like such a young age that I can't think of like before that.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I'm aware of it, but once I started skating at 10 years old, so it's like, you know.
It's very early on, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So.
What about art? Were you interested in art as a kid? Because I know you at least from my perspective, it looks like you got into art later in your skate career.
Well, I mean, you know, again, going back to the concept of art, like, to be honest, once I walked into that skate shop and I saw those graphics, that's what influenced me. I was like, what is this? You know?
Yeah.
The only other thing that I can really kind of like compare to that experience was that my dad drove a container truck, like a dumpster truck. And one time he came to my house. He would rarely come to he lived there too. It was my mom and dad stayed married their entire whatever.
Okay.
But my dad rarely would come to the house with a truck. And one day he happened to be somewhere and he pulled up with this truck and there was a giant graffiti piece on the dumpster.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember you telling this.
I said this on the 9 Club,
Yeah,
I think.
right.
And me and my brother like went outside and we were just like,
yeah,
what
like,
the
wow.
fuck is that? Like, it blew us away.
Yeah,
like,
I'm
we
sure.
were just like, we didn't know what it was, you know?
Yeah, but you were intrigued by it, like it had energy beaming out of it, kind of.
Yeah, totally. And so, you know, back when we were that young, like, I didn't grow up in New York City, so I wasn't like riding subway trains that had graffiti on them, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in like a suburb of like the city.
Right.
So if you went up to like, you know, anywhere in my neighborhood, there wasn't really like, maybe down by the railroad tracks there was graffiti. And if you went into the other two cities that I grew up next to, Patterson and Passaic, you know, hip hop culture was sort of like slightly more embraced there because it was just more of like an inner city, whereas like Clifton, where I grew up, was like a suburb, like a suburban kind of like city. Like, we had industry, but Patterson and Passaic are like two old industrial towns. Mm-hmm. And so there was just more like urban shit there, you know? But, you know, where my dad worked was in Patterson, and where the container truck and the facility that he worked for was in Patterson. So whoever painted that dumpster was a Patterson graffiti writer in the 80s. And I don't remember who the graffiti writer was, but it just came back and we were just like, we were blown away.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, as I started going into the city more and more, even with my mom and dad, like just riding the highway into the city, I started to notice like graffiti tags and stuff like that. So, you know, that kind of shaped me in terms of like, and then of course my whole understanding of art came through graffiti.
Yeah.
You know, not going to like the of course every kid like goes to a museum at some point and they understand like the fucking Mona Lisa and all that bullshit. But, you know, my understanding of like what art was came out of graffiti art, and, you know, was shaped so much by like understanding application of a medium to a medium, you know what I'm saying? Like, and color, and where you choose your, you know, how you present your moniker or whatever. So, and then of course, you know, you get into like, then it's not a far leap from like into like, say, Keith Haring, who did quote unquote graffiti, or then you get into like, you know, Style Wars with the move into like the gallery scene for those young graffiti writers in the, you know, late 70s, early 80s, whatever. So I just started to understand graffiti through like, you know, that early Soho scene and blah, 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 and, you know, whatever. And, you know, when I was a kid, you know, most of that scene in Soho was still kind of like a little there.
Okay.
And then Chelsea, I watched kind of like Chelsea sort of like come in, you know, where all the kind of like art galleries are now.
Yeah.
And now they're like moving sort of out of Chelsea. It's really interesting to watch.
Okay.
But yeah, so I, you know, I was never like motivated as a kid to be like, oh, I want to be an artist. You know?
Okay. Yeah.
That was not like something I was, you know.
Yeah, contemplating or thinking about. Yeah.
But in high school, I did take like art classes, and my art teachers were always like, oh, you're pretty good at like, you know, this and that. Like, I like to draw. And I actually did go to school for 2 years in Jersey City post high school. I went to college and I studied art.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I was like, I think I'm gonna study art. And it sucked. I was like, and as soon as I could figure out, like, then I got the kind of like tap to go out to SF, and I was just like, fuck it, I'm just going to go out to SF.
Yeah.
And my mom was kind of like heartbroken. She's like, what about school? And I was like, you know, fuck it.
I have better shit to do now.
Yeah, and to be honest, I should have just went out to SF or LA like right out of high school, but I didn't. But, you know, that 93, 94, 95 gave me the opportunity to be skating in Manhattan rather than LA.
Yeah.
You know, so that was like a huge kind of like thing for me, because that's when I started to get my first bits of coverage, you know.
Yeah.
That Wheels of Fortune came out. I get to ride for Zoo. I get to ride for Stereo. I don't think any of that stuff would really have happened if I like moved out to LA. Plus, it was crazy to move out to LA back then. You know, Huff and Keenan did it, and Gino and Ben, they did it because they had like a landing patch in LA/SF, you know. There wasn't many dudes from the East Coast that were like, fuck it, we're going to go to the West Coast, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, there was pretty much like none. I mean, granted, Jim Murphy rode for Alva. Tom Groholski rode for Vision. You know, those guys are like East Coast guys. But it wasn't until like, you know, Huff and Keenan kind of like made the leap over. And, you know, in many respects, like those guys didn't really come back for quite a bit of time. In fact, I remember not have met Keith yet, knowing who he was, knowing he was from New York, and I had never really met him. It wasn't until like he did his whole stint on Fun and kind of came back. Actually, you know, to come to think of it, I might have met him at OD's, like, but I feel like when I was at OD's, which was a skate shop on the west side, he was already gone. Like, he had already moved.
He was already in California?
Yeah, he was already in California. And same thing with Keenan, too. I feel like they went out there together. And then Gino was just like his, you know, Gino was like Long Island, and then he obviously made that leap, too. So I didn't really skate with Gino until like much, much later, you know. But yeah, it's super interesting.
Okay, I have a very quick last one from Anthony Pappalardo.
Oh, wow.
The journalist, not the...
Yeah. Either one would be fascinating.
So he said, what neighborhood has the most interesting history to you? And do you have any good books or resources related to that you could share?
Well, shit. I mean, every neighborhood in New York has fascinating.
Sure. Yeah.
In terms of like, I'm super into mafia history.
Yep.
So I'm going to say if you haven't read Murder Machine, which is about Roy DeMeo, and it's kind of like Canarsie Flatlands, read Murder Machine. It's probably one of the greatest books ever written. It's super fascinating.
Cool.
There's plenty of other things, but I'll just kind of throw that one out there. It's a great New York's little glimpse into like New York City in the 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And Roy DeMeo, Nino Gaggi, and his nephew. Super fascinating book. Super, super fascinating. That was written by... I can't remember who it was. My apologies. But yeah, it's a great book. In terms of neighborhoods, every single neighborhood is equally as fascinating. You know? I live in Queens, so...
Where do you live in Queens? I'm not sure.
I live right on the Brooklyn-Queens border in this neighborhood called Ridgewood. And I kind of got pushed out here randomly. I randomly ended up in this neighborhood. So I'm really butted up against Bushwick. And, you know, I spent plenty of time, like, on the north side of Brooklyn.
Okay.
Whether it was Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Bushwick.
Is that close to Long Island City?
It is. Well, Greenpoint borders Long Island City. It's one of the few places in Brooklyn and Queens where the border is based on a waterway.
Yeah.
There's a little... they call it a creek. It's kind of like a river by many people's standards, but it's a little inlet off of the East River.
Right, I remember going there, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so Long Island City and Greenpoint are divided by this little, they call it Newtown Creek.
So you're a little bit farther east to Long Island City, I guess?
I'm a little bit further east, correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not necessarily, I'm separated from Long Island City by this little, well, it's not a little neighborhood, it's a big neighborhood in Queens called Maspeth. And Maspeth is interesting because there's not a single train line that goes there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like you're in the suburbs sometimes in some places of Maspeth, which is funny. But yeah, so I got to cut across Maspeth to get into, or I could go through Greenpoint to get to Long Island City. I can go kind of two ways, but essentially I have to navigate around that waterway to get into Long Island City.
All right.
But so my neighborhood is super fascinating because it's an old German neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every neighborhood in New York has its own batch of crazy ass history. You know, every single one. So.
Yeah, let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Bobby.
Yeah, my pleasure.
That's it for my conversation with Bobby. Follow him on Instagram at TimandVixtagram. Follow also his other account at gutter_gallery to check out some of his art. Obviously treat yourself to all his iconic video parts and check out some of his fascinating skateboarding history investigations on the same old YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in. See you soon for a new episode of Beyond Boards.